Tonight, I do not ask you to conquer some hidden mind within you. I ask you to discover what you have been teaching it without knowing. For years, you may have imagined the subconscious as something secret, deep within you, something stubborn that must somehow be controlled, persuaded, or defeated. But I tell you, there is no enemy within. There is only consciousness receiving impressions, accepting what you repeatedly give it, and eventually returning those impressions to you as habits of feeling, expectation, reaction, and identity. Before we go any farther, make one quiet decision about the relationship you intend to have with your own mind tonight. Write in the comments, "My mind follows my assumption." Do not write it as a plea, and do not write it hoping the words themselves possess some mysterious power. Let them simply represent your decision. My mind follows my assumption. Then leave the sentence there and return with me inwardly, because the real declaration is not made with the hand. It is made by what you consent to accept as true. You have never needed to fight your subconscious. You have only needed to understand what it receives from you. Many people imagine that mastery means force. They believe that if an unwanted thought enters, it must immediately be crushed. If fear appears, it must be driven away. If doubt speaks, they must answer it with 10 louder statements. They spend the day standing guard over their own minds, and by evening they are exhausted. That is not mastery. A man who must wrestle with every thought is still being ruled by thoughts. True direction is quieter. You select, you accept, you return. And eventually what you repeatedly accept becomes natural enough that you no longer need to fight for it. You do not master the subconscious by fighting it. You master what you consent to impress upon it. Let that distinction become very clear tonight. A thought may visit you. An impression is what you allow to remain. A moment of fear may visit you. A state of fear is what you repeatedly identify with. An unpleasant possibility may cross the mind. An assumption is what you continue to treat as likely, true, or descriptive of you. These are not the same thing. You may think for one moment, what if something goes wrong? That does not condemn you to anything. But if you spend hour after hour expecting trouble, rehearsing trouble, preparing emotionally for trouble, interpreting every delay as evidence of trouble, then the subconscious is being taught something much deeper than a single sentence. It is being taught, trouble is normal for me. And because the subconscious receives what becomes familiar, the outer personality begins to organize around that expectation. You become watchful. You notice danger first. You interpret uncertainty pessimistically. You speak differently. You decide differently. The world begins to feel like a place in which you must always defend yourself. Then you may say, my subconscious is working against me. No. It learned what you repeatedly gave it. This should not frighten you. It should free you. Because if repetition, acceptance, and familiarity helped establish the old state, then another kind of repetition, another acceptance, another familiarity can establish something new. You are not dealing with a monster. You are dealing with responsiveness. Think of soft wax receiving a seal. The wax does not debate the image pressed into it. It receives the impression. Again and again, you have pressed certain seals upon yourself. I am unlucky. I am forgotten. I have to struggle. Nothing comes easily. People disappoint me. Money never stays. I must be careful or something will go wrong. Perhaps you never deliberately chose these statements. Perhaps they were inherited from experience. Perhaps you heard them from those around you. Perhaps difficult circumstances taught you to expect repetition. Perhaps one painful event occurred, and consciousness quietly made a law from it. One rejection became, I am rejected. One loss became, good things do not last. One financial difficulty became, I will never feel secure. One betrayal became, I cannot trust love. The event passed, the impression remained. This is how the subconscious is often shaped, not through one dramatic command, through conclusions repeated until they no longer feel like conclusions. They feel like facts. Tonight, I want you to begin separating fact from familiarity. Something may feel true simply because you have thought from it for a long time. Familiarity is powerful, but familiarity is not destiny. If you have lived in a house for 20 years, You know where everything is in darkness. You can walk from room to room without thinking. But knowing the house well does not mean you are forbidden to move. So it is with consciousness. You know the old corridors. You know where worry keeps its chair. You know the room where you rehearse rejection. You know the little table where you count what might go wrong. You know the window from which you watch for evidence that life is about to disappoint you. You may know this house very well, but you are not the house. You are the one who has been living there. And what you occupy inwardly can change. This is where control becomes something very different from force. Control does not mean ordering the subconscious, obey me. It means becoming more careful about what you repeatedly offer it as reality. Control does not mean, I will never feel fear again. It means, fear does not get to define who I am. Control does not mean, I will never think another negative thought. It means, I will not build my identity from every passing thought. Control does not mean, I must maintain perfect mental discipline every hour. It means, when I notice that I have returned to an old assumption, I can choose again. This is direction. This is authorship. And it is far more sustainable than warfare. Perhaps you have tried to change your mind by force before. You woke in the morning determined to think positively. Then one difficulty appeared. The old reaction returned. You became disappointed in yourself. Now you had two problems: the original difficulty and the belief that you had failed to control your mind. Then you tried harder. You watched every thought. You corrected every sentence. You became tense. Eventually, the whole practice began to feel like another form of struggle. Let that end. You do not need to become the policeman of consciousness. You need to become its chooser. There is a great difference. A policeman is looking for violations. A chooser is selecting residents. The policeman asks, did I have a bad thought? The chooser asks, where do I wish to live? The policeman fears mistakes. The chooser returns. The policeman counts failures. The chooser remembers identity. Tonight, be the chooser. You may have 10 wandering thoughts and still return to one chosen state. That return is more important than the wandering. Suppose your old assumption is, I am never supported. During the day you begin to choose, I am supported. Then something inconvenient happens. Immediately the old mind says, there, you see, nothing supports you. Do not begin a battle. Do not shout against it. Simply recognize the voice. Old instruction, old familiarity, old residence. Then return. I am supported. Perhaps not even in words. Perhaps you simply refuse to interpret the event as proof of abandonment. That refusal is part of the new impression. This is subtle. The subconscious is not only impressed by sentences, it is impressed by meaning. You can repeat, I am safe, while inwardly scanning the world for danger. The words say safety. The behavior says threat. Which impression is deeper? The state. So tonight, I am less interested in what you say than in what you accept. Do you accept support as possible for you? Do you accept peace as natural for you? Do you accept love without immediately preparing for its loss? Do you accept that your future need not repeat your past? Do you accept that one old pattern does not possess authority merely because it has been practiced often? These are the deeper questions. And before sleep, the answers become easier to feel because the conscious mind is beginning to tire of argument. That is why night is so valuable. During the day, reason is busy. It points to evidence. It remembers history. It asks for guarantees. It wants to know the road. But as the night continues, another kind of acceptance becomes possible. Not irrationality, not denial. A quieter willingness to experience inwardly what you have not yet seen outwardly. This is where you can begin giving the subconscious a different lesson. Not, something good might happen. But, good is natural to me. Not, I hope I become secure. But, security belongs to my identity. Not, perhaps one day I will be loved. But, I am one for whom love is natural. Not, maybe I will succeed. But, I am capable of belonging in the life I desire. Feel the difference. The first statements stand outside the door. The second live within. And the subconscious is always listening for where you live. This does not mean you must pretend circumstances are different from what they are. If an account requires attention, attend to it. If a conversation must be had, have it. If the body requires care, give it proper care. If work must be done, do the work. But practical action and inner identity are not the same thing. You can attend to a difficulty without becoming a difficult life. You can solve a financial matter without making poverty your identity. You can seek help for the body without defining yourself forever by a condition. You can respond to another person without making their behavior the measure of your worth. This is real control. The ability to meet facts without surrendering authorship. The senses say, "This is what appears now." You answer inwardly, "And this is who I choose to be." That is not denial, that is direction. Perhaps the greatest mistake you have made is believing that the subconscious only receives what you intentionally tell it. No, it has been receiving the atmosphere of your inner life, the repeated sigh, the familiar expectation, the sentence you never say aloud, the picture you replay, the conversation you imagine, the conclusion you make after disappointment, the identity you wear when no one is watching. All of these are instruction. And this means you have been teaching your subconscious every day. The only question is whether the lesson was chosen. Tonight, choose it. Do not attempt to give it 10 lessons at once. Choose one. Perhaps I am safe. Perhaps I am supported. Perhaps I am deeply valued. Perhaps life does not have to fight me. Perhaps I can expect good. Do not choose the sentence because it sounds impressive. Choose the one that corrects the deepest old instruction. If you have spent years expecting abandonment, perhaps I am secure in love. If you have spent years expecting difficulty, I am supported. If you have spent years believing you must prove yourself, I am already worthy. If you have spent years believing that peace must wait until every problem is solved, I am allowed to rest now. Choose what feels like a new home. Then understand something important. You may not believe it completely on the first night. That is all right. You do not have to force complete conviction. You are establishing familiarity. A new song is unfamiliar the first time you hear it. A new road requires attention the first time you walk it. A new room feels strange on the first night, but repeated occupancy changes that. What felt foreign becomes known. What was known becomes normal. What becomes normal begins to shape expectation. And expectation is one of the deepest languages of the subconscious. This is why I prefer persistence to intensity. You do not need one magnificent emotional experience. You need a chosen state that you are willing to revisit. Tonight, tomorrow, again. Not obsessively, faithfully. There is a difference. Obsession says, "I must make this happen." Faithfulness says, "This is the state I have chosen." Obsession checks for results. Faithfulness returns to identity. Obsession fears that one bad moment destroys everything. Faithfulness understands that one old reaction is not the whole self. This is how the struggle ends, not because every unwanted thought disappears immediately, because you stop promoting every unwanted thought into authority. The mind can speak without being obeyed. Memory can appear without becoming prophecy. Fear can arise without becoming identity. The old voice can knock without being invited to stay. You are beginning to understand your own power differently. Not power as force, power as consent. What do you consent to call true of yourself? What do you consent to rehearse? What do you consent to carry into sleep? What do you consent to call normal? That is where mastery begins. You do not master the subconscious by fighting it. You master what you consent to impress upon it. Let the words become quieter now. Not because you must sleep immediately, simply because nothing needs to be argued. You are not at war with yourself. There is no hidden enemy to defeat. There is only the old teaching and the new teaching. The old teaching may say, "Expect difficulty." The new teaching says, "I am supported." The old teaching says, "Protect yourself from disappointment." The new teaching says, "I can safely expect good." The old teaching says, "You must struggle." The new teaching says, "Life can meet me with cooperation." The old teaching says, "You are not enough." The new teaching says, "I do not need to earn the right to exist as worthy." One lesson has been repeated for years. Another begins tonight. You are not demanding that the subconscious change instantly. You are simply giving it a clearer instruction, and perhaps for the first time, that instruction is not mixed with warfare. No shouting, no forcing, no punishment, only selection. This, not that, here, not there. I am supported. I am safe. I am guided. Choose one. Let it remain near you. If another thought comes, let it pass. You do not need to correct every visitor. Return to the chosen state. Again, not as labor, as residence. Perhaps tonight you are learning that the greatest control is not the ability to suppress the mind. It is the ability to stop surrendering identity to everything the mind produces. You are larger than the passing thought. You are the awareness that selects what will be accepted. And as this night continues, I will show you how those accepted impressions become familiar, how familiarity becomes expectation, and how expectation quietly begins to shape the life you call your own. For now, there is only one thing to remember. You are not fighting your mind tonight. You are teaching it. And this time, you are choosing the lesson. What you call the subconscious is not another person hidden somewhere inside you. It is not a second mind sitting in darkness and making secret decisions against your wishes. I would have you think of it more intimately than that. It is the deeper continuity of your own consciousness, the region in which repeated impressions cease to feel like ideas and begin to feel like truth. During the day, your conscious attention is constantly moving. It selects, it compares, it judges, it decides. It turns toward one thing and away from another. You hear a sentence and decide what it means. You see an expression on someone's face and interpret it. You receive a letter and form a conclusion. You remember something from the past and give it a new or an old meaning. The conscious mind is moving among appearances, choosing what to emphasize, what to fear, what to welcome, what to believe. But beneath this movement, there is something quieter. There is the accumulation of what has been accepted repeatedly, the assumptions that no longer need to announce themselves, the emotional conclusions that have become so familiar that you scarcely recognize them as conclusions at all. That is the mind beneath your daily thinking, and I want you to understand it without making it mysterious. Imagine a theater after the audience has gone home. During the performance, there were lights, voices, movement, applause, perhaps laughter, perhaps tension. Actors crossed the stage. Curtains opened and closed. Every scene seemed important while it was happening. Then the evening ends. The audience leaves. The costumes are hung away. The lamps grow dim. The theater becomes quiet. Yet the stage remains. The marks upon the floor remain. The scenery remains. The familiar positions remain. And tomorrow, when the actors return, they know where to stand because the stage has already been arranged for the play. Your deeper mind is something like that. During the day, thousands of thoughts may pass through you, but beneath them are the stages upon which those thoughts repeatedly perform. If the stage is arranged around, I must struggle, then many different thoughts will find their place upon that stage. A small difficulty appears. You think, of course, nothing is easy. A delay occurs. You think, I knew this would become complicated. Someone asks something of you. You think, I always have to carry everything. 3 different events, 3 different actors, 1 stage. I must struggle. That is why changing isolated thoughts without changing the stage can become exhausting. You replace one line, but the play remains the same. You answer one fearful thought with a hopeful statement, but the scenery still says, life is difficult for me. Soon another actor enters and speaks the old script again. This is what people often misunderstand about the subconscious. They think it is storing individual sentences as though each thought were placed into a drawer. It is more useful to think in terms of patterns of acceptance. What has become normal? What role feels familiar? What conclusion seems obvious before you have examined it? These are deeper than passing language. Perhaps your stage has been arranged around. I am overlooked. Then you walk into a room and notice the person who did not greet you before you notice the 3 who did. You complete good work and remember the one comment that was not enthusiastic. Someone is occupied for an afternoon and you interpret their distance personally. Why? Because the stage already exists. The conscious mind selects evidence that fits the familiar production. Then you say, "You see, I am overlooked." But perhaps what you are really seeing is how faithfully attention organizes itself around the role it already knows. Now consider another stage. I am naturally valued. The same room, the same people, the same imperfect day, but another inward arrangement. This person can notice that someone failed to greet her without turning it into identity. She can receive criticism without hearing a sentence about her worth. She can experience delay without immediately translating it into rejection. She is not blind. She simply stands upon another stage. And because the stage is different, the same actor can speak a different line. This is why I tell you that your deeper assumptions are not merely beliefs you think about. They are positions from which thinking occurs. What sinks beneath thought eventually becomes the place from which thought rises. Remember that. What sinks beneath thought eventually becomes the place from which thought rises. At first, an idea is something you consider, then perhaps something you repeat, then something you begin to expect. Eventually it becomes the place from which you interpret. At that point, you may no longer hear the original statement. You simply live from it. A child may once have heard, "Money is always difficult." Years later, he may never repeat those exact words, but he feels uneasy whenever money is discussed. He expects every financial improvement to be temporary. He receives and immediately prepares to lose. The sentence has disappeared. The stage remains. Or perhaps someone once concluded, "People leave." The phrase may no longer be consciously repeated, but affection creates anxiety. Closeness awakens vigilance. Silence feels dangerous. The deeper assumption has become the stage from which love is interpreted. This is why real change often feels less like learning a new sentence and more like rehearsing a new role until the role becomes familiar. You are not simply trying to say, "I am supported." You are allowing support to become the stage. What does a person think from support? How does she interpret inconvenience? How does she receive help? How does she respond when a plan changes? How does she feel when the future is not fully visible? If support has become the stage, perhaps the thought rises naturally. I will find a way. Not because she has forced herself to be optimistic, because support is beneath the thought. This is what I mean by the mind beneath daily thinking. It is the ground from which spontaneous reactions emerge. You can learn much about this deeper region by noticing what thought appears first, before you deliberately correct it. Someone says, "We need to talk." What rises? Fear, curiosity, defensiveness, calm. A bill arrives. What rises? Panic, resignation, order, capability. Someone praises you. What rises? Suspicion, embarrassment, ease. Someone becomes quiet. What rises? "I have done something wrong," or they may simply be occupied. You need not judge yourself for the first response. Observe it. It tells you something about the stage. The first reaction is often old scenery becoming visible. This is valuable information, not a verdict. Information. Perhaps you discover that beneath many thoughts is, "I am not safe." Then do not waste the whole night correcting one branch after another. Go deeper. What would life feel like if safety were the stage? Not a world in which nothing unpredictable ever occurs. A self who does not interpret every uncertainty as danger. That is different. Perhaps the new stage is, "I am safe within myself." Then from that stage, another family of thoughts becomes possible. "I can handle this." "I do not know yet." And that is all right. One moment does not decide everything. "I can respond when I know more." These thoughts rise naturally from another foundation. You do not have to memorize them. Change the foundation. The lines begin changing by themselves. This is one of the reasons I would not have you become obsessed with correcting every sentence in the mind. If you spend all day chasing thought after thought, you remain on the surface of consciousness. You are rearranging actors while leaving the stage untouched. Go beneath. Ask, "What must I be assuming for this thought to feel so natural?" That question can reveal a great deal. If the thought is, "They probably do not want me there," perhaps beneath it is, "I do not belong." If the thought is, This good thing will not last. Perhaps beneath it is, good is unstable for me. If the thought is, I must work twice as hard just to receive half as much, perhaps beneath it is, life resists me. Then you have found the deeper production. Now you can choose another. I belong. Good can remain. Life can support me. Do not rush to force these new assumptions. Let them become places you visit repeatedly. A stage becomes familiar through rehearsal. At first, the actor must remember where to stand. Later, the movement becomes effortless. So tonight, if the new state feels less natural than the old one, do not be discouraged. Of course it does. You have rehearsed the old production many times, perhaps for years. You know the old cues. You know the old emotional timing. You know exactly how to respond when disappointment enters. You know how to become tense when money is mentioned. You know how to withdraw when affection becomes uncertain. You know how to prepare for rejection. The role may be painful, but it is practiced. A practiced role feels natural even when it hurts. That is why familiarity must not be confused with truth. You may be very skilled at being afraid. That does not make fear your nature. You may be very practiced at expecting struggle. That does not make struggle your destiny. You may know the part of the overlooked one perfectly. That does not mean the theater belongs permanently to that play. Change the production. Change the stage. Let the actor learn another role. Perhaps, I am supported. At first the line may feel foreign. Do not shout it. Do not force emotion into it. Simply begin noticing what would be different if support were normal. Perhaps tomorrow someone offers assistance, and instead of saying, no, I must do everything myself, you receive it. That is rehearsal. Perhaps a plan changes, and instead of immediately predicting disaster, you say, let me see where this leads. That is rehearsal. Perhaps you make a mistake, and instead of attacking yourself for an hour, you correct it. That is rehearsal. The state is becoming embodied through interpretation. Now consider, life always surprises me pleasantly. Do not hear this as a promise that every event will please you. Human life remains varied. But what would change if you no longer approached the unknown as though it were your enemy? Perhaps the phrase becomes a new stage from which uncertainty feels more spacious. A change of plan no longer automatically means loss. A delayed letter no longer automatically means bad news. An unexpected meeting may contain possibility. You are not demanding that life perform according to fantasy. You are withdrawing the old assumption that the unknown must injure you. That alone can change the entire tone of consciousness. The deeper mind learns through what becomes emotionally accepted. This word accepted is important, not merely repeated. Accepted. You can repeat a statement for an hour while inwardly arguing against it. Then the argument may be the stronger impression. Suppose you say, I am supported. But after every repetition, another voice answers, no, you are not. If you continue turning the practice into combat, the emotional lesson may become, support is something I must struggle to believe. That is not what you want. So soften. Perhaps begin with, what if support could become normal for me? Or, I am willing to know myself as supported. Or perhaps simply imagine one small experience of support already received. A friend says, I am glad everything worked out. You answer, so am I. Now the subconscious receives implication, rather than argument. Support has happened. The scene is after. The mind does not need to prove anything. This is why imagination can be so effective. It allows you to experience the stage rather than merely describe it. If I tell you about a theater, you may understand it intellectually. But if you stand upon the stage, hear the voices, feel the atmosphere, the experience becomes different. So it is with the fulfilled state. Do not only say, I am valued. Experience one moment in which being valued is unquestioned. Perhaps someone asks your opinion and listens carefully. Perhaps your work is received with appreciation. Perhaps a loved one looks at you with warmth. Perhaps no one else is present and you simply treat yourself as someone whose feelings matter. The form can vary. The implication remains. I am valued. You are giving the deeper mind a new stage. And once that stage becomes more familiar, thoughts will begin rising from it. This is the part many people overlook. They try to control the leaves. The leaves are thought, but thought grows from something: expectation, identity, emotional familiarity, the deeper assumption. Change that, and the surface gradually reorganizes. You may notice one day that a situation which once would have frightened you now creates only mild concern. You may not immediately recognize this as progress. You expected some dramatic sign. But this is profound. The stage has shifted. The old actor entered. The old line did not come. Or perhaps it came faintly and you no longer believed it. That is change. Suppose someone delays answering you. In the past, the inner production began immediately. They are losing interest. I said something wrong. This always happens. Now the same silence occurs. And you notice, I do not know what this means yet. That simple sentence may reveal an enormous transformation. You have moved from assumption of rejection to openness. Later, perhaps even, everything is fine, not forced, natural. The deeper mind has begun generating another script. This is why I want you to become interested in what rises spontaneously, not only in what you deliberately say. Your spontaneous reactions reveal what has been rehearsed, but do not use them to condemn yourself. Use them to discover the play. Once you know the play, you can choose another. There is another image I want to give you. Imagine that beneath the visible theater, there is a storage room filled with old scenery, a painted wall marked struggle, a doorway marked rejection, a window marked not enough, a chair marked waiting. Whenever a certain situation appears, the stagehands of habit bring out the familiar scenery. You hardly notice the change. Suddenly you are standing in the old set again. The same emotional lighting, the same lines. Tonight, begin refusing some of the scenery. You do not need to burn it. You do not need to destroy it. Simply stop bringing it onto the stage. Someone is quiet. Do not automatically bring out rejection. A bill arrives. Do not automatically bring out ruin. A plan changes. Do not automatically bring out nothing works for me. The stage can remain open for a moment. This is a powerful practice. Do not rush to give every event an old meaning. Leave space. In that space, you can choose. Perhaps I am supported. Let that be the scenery. Perhaps I belong. Perhaps life can surprise me pleasantly. Perhaps I am capable. Now the same event occurs inside another atmosphere. That is conscious selection working with the deeper mind. And as night continues, selection becomes easier because the outer performance is ending. The audience of the senses begins to leave. The day's actors have spoken enough. The letters have been read. The conversations have ended. The doors are closed. The house grows quieter. Soon you will enter that beautiful region where the conscious mind no longer wants to discuss every detail. And before you reach it, I want you to know what you are carrying there. Not every thought from the day, the stage beneath them. What stage will remain when the audience goes home tonight? I must struggle, or I am supported, I am overlooked, or I am naturally valued. Something is always about to go wrong, or life can meet me kindly. Choose the deeper arrangement. You do not have to produce 100 thoughts from it. One state is enough. Let the theater become quiet. Imagine the last actor leaving. The curtain is still. The seats are empty. The footlights dim. And there, beneath all the noise of the day, the stage waits. It will receive another play. You decide which one. Perhaps tonight the scenery is simple. No grand palace, no dramatic spectacle. Only a room where you belong. A table, a lamp, a sense of being supported. You stand there inwardly and know, this is normal for me now. Let that become the new rehearsal. No audience, no applause, no need to convince anyone. Only familiarity, only repetition of a new atmosphere. And understand this clearly. What you practice inwardly is not merely producing thoughts for the moment. You are teaching consciousness what kind of thoughts will feel natural tomorrow. What sinks beneath thought eventually becomes the place from which thought rises. So let something worthy sink beneath thought tonight. Support, belonging, security, value, trust. Not all of them if that feels like too much. Choose one. Let it become the stage. Tomorrow's thoughts may begin to rise differently, because tonight you chose where they would stand. And as the theater of the day grows quiet, you do not need to remain in the audience any longer. You may step onto the stage yourself, not as the old character, as the one you have chosen to be. Now I would have you notice something more subtle than the words you repeat. A sentence may be spoken once and forgotten. A sentence may be repeated 100 times and still remain outside you. But an assumption that has become normal does not need to be repeated at all. It simply feels like the way life is. This is where the deeper mind receives its strongest instruction. The subconscious is impressed less by what you occasionally declare than by what you repeatedly accept as normal. You may say, I am wealthy. But if every unexpected expense awakens fear, if every conversation about money produces tension, if every small purchase becomes a reminder of insecurity, then another lesson is being taught beneath the words. The lips say, I am wealthy. The state says, money is dangerous. And the deeper mind receives the state. You may say, I am loved. Yet if silence immediately becomes rejection, if affection makes you nervous because you are already preparing for its disappearance, if you continually wonder whether someone has changed their mind, then another assumption may still feel more natural. The words say, I am loved. The inner expectation says, they will leave. And again, the deeper instruction is not merely vocabulary. It is normality. What do you expect without effort? What conclusion appears before you? Deliberately choose another. What interpretation feels so familiar that you barely recognize it as interpretation? There is your deeper lesson. This is why I do not want you to become fascinated with beautiful phrases while leaving the old normal untouched. Words are useful. I use words constantly. But words are doors. You must enter the room. If you say, I am secure, ask what security would make normal. Would it be normal to receive good news? Would it be normal for money to remain rather than disappear immediately? Would it be normal for someone to care for you without making you suspicious? Would it be normal for your work to be valued? Would it be normal to make a mistake without believing the whole future has collapsed? Would it be normal to wake without preparing yourself for trouble? This is where the work becomes real. You are teaching consciousness a new normal. Consider how easily you accept things that already belong to your identity. You do not need to convince yourself every morning of your own name. You do not awaken and say, I must generate great emotion so that my name remains mine. You simply know it. If someone mispronounces it, your identity does not collapse. If someone forgets it for a moment, you do not conclude that you have lost it. Your name feels natural to you. It belongs. This is the quality I would have you cultivate around the states you desire. Not emotional strain, belonging. If wealth is your desire, perhaps the deepest state is not the excitement of receiving money. Perhaps it is the normality of provision, the ordinary assumption, there is enough. Or, I know how to meet what comes. Or, my affairs can be orderly. You may still calculate. You may still plan. You may still be wise. But calculation no longer means danger. Planning no longer means fear. Responsibility no longer means scarcity. The state changes what the action means. This is very important. Two people may perform the same outward act while living in entirely different inner worlds. Two people may save money. One saves because every day feels like the beginning of disaster. The other saves because wise stewardship feels natural. The outward action is similar. The state is not. Two people may ask for clarification in a relationship. One asks because she is terrified of being abandoned. The other asks because honest communication feels natural within secure love. Same question, different identity. Two people may work diligently. One works from, if I stop for a moment, I will become worthless. The other works from, my abilities have value, and I enjoy developing them. Same effort, different normal. The subconscious learns the normal beneath the behavior. That is why superficial imitation does not create a state. You may attempt to behave like a prosperous person while inwardly fearing every consequence. You may attempt to behave like a confident person while secretly asking whether everyone approves. You may attempt to appear loved while constantly looking for signs of rejection. The deeper mind is not deceived by performance, because the performer knows the role is being performed. I would rather have you become inwardly familiar with the state than act theatrically from it. Let wealth become normal in meaning before you make it dramatic in appearance. Let love become normal in consciousness before you try to prove it through another person. Let success become normal as belonging before you demand applause. Let peace become normal before the world has given you perfect conditions. This is the movement from affirmation into assumption. An affirmation says, I am secure. An assumption eventually says nothing. It meets an uncertain moment and remains secure. That silence is powerful. An affirmation says, I am valued. An assumption receives criticism without turning criticism into identity. An affirmation says, I am supported. An assumption encounters a temporary difficulty and still expects a way through. When the state has become normal, the sentence may disappear. The life begins speaking it for you. This is what I want you to understand before we go deeper into sleep. You are not trying to fill the subconscious with an endless stream of impressive words. You are changing what feels psychologically ordinary. Perhaps your old ordinary has been struggle. You may not even recognize struggle as a state because you have lived in it so long. You wake and immediately think about what must be fixed. You receive good news and immediately look for the hidden difficulty. Someone offers help and you feel uncomfortable receiving it. A day goes well and a part of you waits for the correction. This can feel responsible. It can feel realistic. It can even feel intelligent. But perhaps it is simply familiar. If you have lived beside a railway for years, eventually you may stop noticing the trains. The noise has become normal. In the same way, inner tension can become so familiar that you no longer call it tension. You call it life. Tonight, begin hearing the trains again. Notice the assumptions you stopped noticing because they have been present too long. I must be careful. I should not expect too much. Things never stay good for long. I cannot relax yet. I need to know what will happen. I have to earn love. I must prove that I deserve my place. You may have repeated none of these aloud today. Still, you may have lived from them. That is the difference between conscious statement and subconscious normality. The conscious statement is easy to hear. The deeper normal is often hidden precisely because it feels obvious. Ask yourself, what do I treat as obvious about my life? Do I treat difficulty as obvious? Do I treat rejection as obvious? Do I treat being misunderstood as obvious? Do I treat shortage as obvious? Do I treat delay as obvious? Or have I begun making support obvious, belonging obvious, opportunity obvious, recovery possible and natural, love safe enough to receive, good stable enough to remain? The state you call obvious is very close to the state you call normal. And what feels normal influences what you notice, how you interpret, how you respond, and what you repeatedly expect next. So do not be surprised if changing the normal changes the whole tone of your life before it changes any dramatic circumstance. You may first notice that you sleep differently, that you no longer rehearse every conversation, that you do not check as often, that one delayed answer does not destroy the afternoon, that one expense does not become a prophecy, that another person's mood no longer becomes your identity. These changes may appear small. They are not small. They reveal that another normal is being learned. A person who once expected abandonment may suddenly realize, I did not panic when they were quiet. A person who once expected financial danger may notice, I handled that expense without imagining ruin. A person who once expected failure may say, I made a mistake and simply corrected it. These moments are evidence of state. Do not overlook them because they are not dramatic manifestations. They are consciousness becoming less loyal to an old normal. And that is profound. Perhaps the new state first appears as the absence of something. Less fear, less explanation, less checking, less need to defend, less need to predict, less need to rehearse. The mind becomes quieter because it no longer needs to maintain the old world with constant commentary. This is why naturalness and sleep belong beautifully together. Sleep does not favor strain. You cannot deeply rest while trying to force yourself into another identity, but you can gently become familiar with one. Night after night, one small scene, one sentence, one feeling, one implication. Not, I must believe this immediately, but this can become normal for me. There is gentleness in that. This can become normal for me. Being supported can become normal. Being valued can become normal. Expecting good can become normal. Feeling safe in love can become normal. Meeting money with order rather than fear can become normal. Trusting yourself can become normal. Not because you are pretending that human life has no difficulty, because difficulty no longer needs to occupy the throne. A difficult day can occur inside a supported life. An awkward conversation can occur inside a valued identity. A financial decision can occur inside prosperity. A period of care can occur inside a consciousness oriented toward health and restoration. One event does not have to redefine the normal. This is the freedom you are learning. Suppose tonight you choose, I am supported. Do not spend the next hour trying to feel some enormous confirmation. Instead ask, if support had been normal for me for years, how would I lie here? Would I be demanding that tomorrow explain itself? Perhaps not. Would I be mentally calling every person I know into imagination to see who might help? Perhaps not. Would I be calculating every possible road? Perhaps not. Maybe I would simply think, I will know what to do. Feel how ordinary that is. Not, a miracle is coming. Only, I will know what to do. That may be the voice of support. Perhaps you choose, I am loved. If love had been normal for years, would you spend the night imagining someone desperately proving it? Perhaps not. Maybe the deeper feeling would be, I am safe to sleep. Or, I do not need to wonder. Or perhaps no sentence, only the absence of emotional vigilance. That absence is an impression. Perhaps you choose, I am prosperous. If prosperity were normal, perhaps the mind would not be intoxicated with fantasies of display. It might simply feel, there is room. Room to breathe, room to choose, room to plan, room to be generous responsibly, room to think beyond the next emergency. That sense of room may be more useful than a dazzling image that still feels foreign. The subconscious learns from familiarity. So give it an experience it can begin to know. Not an experience so extravagant that you spend the whole time thinking, this could never be me. Bring the state closer. Make it ordinary. If a mansion feels absurd to you tonight, do not force yourself to wander through 50 imaginary rooms. Imagine paying something calmly. Imagine closing the ledger without fear. Imagine saying, everything is taken care of. That may carry the essence of prosperity in a form the deeper mind can inhabit. If an enormous romantic scene feels theatrical, do not force it. Imagine an ordinary good night from secure love. I will see you in the morning. Good night. That may contain more belonging than 1,000 dramatic declarations. If fame or recognition feels too abstract, imagine simply being asked for your work because your contribution is valued. Someone says, we would like you involved. You answer, I would be glad to. Simple, natural. The state does not need spectacle. It needs acceptance. This is also why repetition should be understood properly. Mechanical repetition can become empty. Familiar repetition can become residence. There is a difference. Imagine you are learning a piece of music. At first, every note requires attention. Your hands feel uncertain. You stop. Begin again. Eventually the movement becomes familiar. You no longer think about every note. The music seems to play through you. So it is with assumption. At first, I am supported. You remember the sentence consciously. Later, you begin interpreting from support. Eventually, you may no longer need the words. The state plays through you. This is the goal, not to spend the rest of your life repeating a sentence desperately. To reach the point where the sentence has become unnecessary because its meaning has entered your concept of self. What sinks beneath thought eventually becomes the place from which thought rises, and what becomes normal becomes easier to carry beneath thought. This is why the final moments before sleep are so precious. As you become drowsy, You are less interested in maintaining intellectual resistance. The day's arguments weaken. The visible world recedes from attention. You are not completely unconscious yet, but you are becoming less fascinated by contradiction. In that softened region, a simple assumption may be experienced with less effort. Not shouted, not argued, experienced. You may hear, "It is all right." And for a moment, you simply let it be all right. You may think, "I am safe." And instead of immediately asking for proof, you allow the sentence to rest. You may imagine, "Everything worked out." And the reasoning mind, tired now, does not demand the entire explanation. This is how a new normal begins, through moments of unopposed acceptance. One moment becomes several. Several become familiar. Familiarity becomes expectation. Expectation influences perception. Perception influences response. And slowly, the life that once felt like struggle may begin to be met from another state entirely. Do not rush the process. If something has felt normal for 20 years, you do not need to hate yourself, because it has not become foreign in one evening. You are not correcting a moral failure. You are establishing another familiarity. If you return to an old response tomorrow, notice and return again. That is all. Do not say, "I failed." That sentence itself may belong to the old normal. Say, "I remembered the old road," then choose the new one. You can know a road without continuing to live at its destination. This is how gentleness becomes persistence. And persistence is far stronger than self-punishment. Perhaps you were taught that change must feel difficult to be real. Let even that assumption become questionable tonight. Maybe transformation can become quiet. Maybe a new identity can enter like dawn, rather than thunder. At first the room is dark. Then something changes so gradually that you cannot name the exact moment. The objects are still. The world has not announced itself. But there is more light, then more, until finally you realize, it is morning. A new normal can arrive like that. You may not know the exact night when "I am supported" stopped feeling like a phrase and began feeling like truth. You may simply notice that you no longer expect abandonment from every silence. You may not know when "I am capable" became natural. You simply notice that a challenge no longer automatically produces defeat. You may not know when "I am valued" took root. You simply stop asking every room to confirm your worth. This is the deep work. Quiet, often invisible, and perfectly suited to sleep. Tonight, therefore, do not ask, "How strongly can I affirm?" Ask, "What am I willing to let become normal?" That question is gentler and deeper. What am I willing to let become normal? Support, enough, belonging, peace, being treated with respect, receiving help, expecting useful opportunities, trusting that one closed door does not close life itself. Perhaps there is one thing that has felt almost forbidden to call normal. Good lasting, love being safe, money being orderly, rest without guilt, success without constant fear of losing it. Choose one. You do not need to make it spectacular. Let it be permitted first. It is permitted for this to be normal in my life. Then, this can be normal. Then perhaps later, this is normal for me. Feel the progression. No violence, no demand. You are allowing consciousness to move. You are giving the deeper mind another pattern often enough that it may begin to recognize it as home. And when you lie down at night, understand what you are really doing. You are not merely repeating sentences into darkness. You are deciding what kind of inner world will feel ordinary enough to accompany you beyond conscious effort. Soon the day will fade. Soon you will no longer be carefully choosing every thought. And this is precisely why the state you establish before sleep matters. You are preparing the atmosphere in which thought itself will grow quiet. If the final atmosphere is fear, fear has been made familiar once again. If the final atmosphere is resentment, resentment has been rehearsed. If the final atmosphere is scarcity, scarcity has been treated as home. But if the final atmosphere is support, then support has been given another night of familiarity. If it is safety, safety has been rehearsed. If it is being loved, love has been allowed to feel ordinary. If it is completion, completion has been carried towards sleep. Do not underestimate ordinary repetition. A river does not carve stone through one dramatic blow. It remains. Night after night, you can remain with a different meaning, not forcefully, faithfully, until something once foreign feels less foreign, until something once impossible feels conceivable, until something conceivable feels likely, until something likely feels natural, until naturalness no longer requires words. Then the deeper mind has learned another lesson. And perhaps this is what you really meant when you said you wanted to control the subconscious. Not to command it like a servant frightened into obedience, but to become conscious of what you are making familiar, to choose your normal, to stop rehearsing one identity while asking for another, to let the conscious statement and the deeper expectation finally agree. I am supported. And beneath it, yes, support is normal for me. I am loved. And beneath it, yes, love can stay. I am secure. And beneath it, yes, I do not need to prepare for disaster. I am capable. And beneath it, yes, I can meet life. When the words and the expectation begin to face in the same direction, there is less strain, less argument, less inner division. You are no longer saying one thing while emotionally rehearsing its opposite. The mind grows quieter because it is no longer receiving two instructions at once. This is where sleep begins to become more than unconscious repetition of yesterday. It becomes an opportunity to leave one chosen normal at the threshold, not a perfect image, not a perfect emotion, a chosen normal. And as the night grows quieter, you may begin asking only this: what would feel ordinary if the life I desire were already mine? Then let that ordinariness come close, not the celebration, the day after, not the arrival, the residence, not the miracle. The life in which the miracle is no longer called a miracle. That is what the deeper mind can learn. That is what you can carry towards sleep. And tonight, you need not make anything enormous. You need only begin teaching yourself that the good you desire does not have to remain foreign. It can become familiar. It can become expected. It can become normal. You may believe that tonight is the first time you have ever deliberately attempted to impress the subconscious mind. But I tell you, you have been impressing it every night of your life. The difference is that most of the time, you did not know what you were doing. You thought you were merely thinking about the day. You thought you were merely worrying. You thought you were merely remembering a conversation. You thought you were simply trying to prepare yourself for tomorrow. But consciousness does not divide these moments as neatly as you imagine. What you repeatedly experience inwardly, especially when the outer world is growing quiet and your attention is withdrawing from the senses, becomes part of the atmosphere you carry with you into sleep. The question is not whether you impress the subconscious before sleep. The question is what impression you leave upon it. That is the question I would have you remember tonight. What impression are you leaving? Not what words did you repeat. Not what technique did you perform. Not whether you visualized perfectly. What was the final inner condition? Suppose a man spends the evening replaying an argument. The physical conversation ended hours ago. The other person may be in another part of the city. No one is speaking now, yet in imagination the argument continues. He hears the accusation again. He feels the same irritation. He invents a better reply. Then he imagines what the other person would say to that reply. He answers again. Perhaps he wins the argument this time. But psychologically, what has he carried towards sleep? Conflict. The words may have changed. The state has not. The subconscious receives the atmosphere of conflict long after the physical event has ended. Then the man says, I could not stop thinking about it. But notice what really occurred. The event happened once in the world of sense. He permitted it to happen 20 more times in imagination. This is why the final hours of the day deserve your understanding. You do not need to fear them. You need only become conscious of how you use them. Perhaps your habit is not argument. Perhaps it is money. You lie down, and the room becomes quiet. Then a figure appears in the mind, an obligation, a payment, a future expense. You begin calculating, then calculating again. You think of what may happen next month. You imagine an unexpected problem. You remember another time when money was difficult. One thought gives birth to another until the body is lying in bed, but but consciousness is standing inside an invisible counting house. The books never close. The clerk never goes home. The candle continues burning over the ledger, and you fall asleep beneath the assumption, there is not enough. Perhaps you never say those words. You do not need to. The feeling says them. The vigilance says them. The repeated mental arithmetic says them. The inability to release tomorrow says them. The subconscious is being given an impression. Not because money is evil. Not because calculation is wrong. If your affairs require attention, attend to them wisely. But there comes a moment when useful calculation ends and psychological rehearsal begins. Know the difference. Useful thought says, this requires my attention tomorrow. Fear says, I must solve my whole life before I am permitted to sleep. You are allowed to close the ledger. You are allowed to say, I have considered what can be considered tonight. The rest belongs to tomorrow. And then you may choose another impression. Perhaps, I am supported. Not shouted, not forced, simply accepted as the state from which tomorrow will be met. The question is not whether you impress the subconscious before sleep. The question is what impression you leave upon it. Perhaps your habit is imagining rejection. Someone did not answer as quickly as you hoped. Someone appeared distracted. Someone spoke less warmly than usual. The day gave you an incomplete fact. Then imagination completed it. They are losing interest. They have changed their mind. I knew this would happen. Now the scene begins. You imagine the future conversation. You imagine separation. You imagine being overlooked. You imagine the expression on another person's face. You prepare emotionally for an event that has not occurred. Then you fall asleep not merely with uncertainty, but with an entire inward experience of rejection. This too is programming. Not programming in the sense of a machine receiving mechanical instructions, but consciousness becoming familiar with a state. You have rehearsed being rejected. You have given rejection scenery, dialogue, feeling, expectation. You have allowed the unknown to borrow the face of your old fear. Then tomorrow, even before anything new happens, you awaken already leaning toward the familiar conclusion. This is how a night can become a bridge between yesterday's assumption and tomorrow's reaction. But the bridge can carry another state. Suppose the same unanswered matter exists. You do not deny it. There is no answer yet. Very well, that is the fact. But instead of making silence mean abandonment, you permit the night to end differently. You think, I do not know what this silence means, and I refuse to make fear its interpreter. Then perhaps you move beyond even that. You imagine a later moment. The matter has resolved. Someone says, I knew everything would be all right. You answer, yes, it was. The scene is brief. You do not continue. The impression has changed. The world of sense still contains an unanswered question. The inward world contains completion. This is how you begin directing the night. Perhaps you have spent many evenings anticipating bad news. You know this habit well. Nothing has happened, yet the mind says, what if? What if the letter is unfavorable? What if the meeting goes badly? What if the opportunity disappears? What if the body does not improve? What if tomorrow brings something difficult? The mind believes it is protecting you. It says, if I imagine every danger in advance, perhaps I will be prepared. But preparation and suffering are not the same thing. You can prepare wisely without emotionally living through 10 disasters that never occur. A man may carry an umbrella because rain is possible. He need not spend the entire night imagining a flood. There is a point at which prudence ends and identification begins. If you repeatedly fall asleep expecting bad news, then bad news has become psychologically normal before any messenger arrives. Tonight, you may change what is normal. You do not need to guarantee that tomorrow contains nothing unpleasant. That would be another form of strain. Instead, choose something deeper. Whatever tomorrow contains, I am supported. Whatever letter arrives, I will meet it from strength. Whatever decision is required, clarity can come. Whatever is unfinished tonight does not need to become catastrophe in imagination. Feel the freedom of that. The subconscious does not need a perfect future. It needs a different identity. Nothing difficult can ever happen. But, difficulty does not define me. Not, every person must behave as I wish, but, I remain valued. Not, every financial matter must disappear tonight, but, I meet my affairs from support rather than fear. These are much more stable impressions. Perhaps your habit before sleep is abandonment. Not necessarily because anyone is leaving. Abandonment can become a private mood. You lie there and feel that you must carry everything alone. You remember who did not understand you, who was not there, who disappointed you, who failed to give what you hoped they would give. And little by little, the whole world seems distant. The room grows quiet, and instead of feeling rest, you feel deserted. Notice the state. Do not argue with it. Do not shame yourself for it. Simply recognize, this is an impression I have carried before. Then ask, must I carry it again tonight? No. Perhaps nothing outside has changed yet, but inwardly you may permit another experience. Imagine someone saying, you do not have to carry everything alone. Perhaps you answer, I know. Or perhaps no one speaks. You simply feel the bed beneath you and think, I am supported. For tonight, let that be enough. You do not need to know the form support will take tomorrow. You are selecting the impression. This is the art. The night does not require a complicated ritual. It requires awareness of what you are handing over as you become less conscious of the outer world. Imagine a traveler arriving at an inn after a long journey. All day he has carried a heavy trunk. When he reaches his room, does he climb into bed with the trunk still upon his shoulders? No. He puts it down. Yet psychologically, many people do exactly the opposite. They carry the whole day into sleep. The conversation, the mistake, the account, the fear, tomorrow's appointment, another person's expression, an old memory, a future possibility, all piled upon the bed. Then they wonder why rest feels like continuation rather than release. You are allowed to put down the trunk. Tomorrow, if something within it requires attention, you can open it. But sleep is not the place where every unfinished matter must remain open. The day can close before every problem is solved. This is an important discipline, not avoidance. Closure. You say, I have lived this day. I will not rehearse its unwanted parts simply because they happened. Then you choose what remains. Perhaps one sentence, perhaps one image, perhaps one feeling. The night becomes selective, and selection is the beginning of mastery. Do not try to carry 10 new impressions into sleep. One is enough. If your day felt chaotic, everything is settling into order. If your day felt lonely, I am deeply supported. If your day felt uncertain, I am safe without knowing every detail. If your day felt disappointing, this is not the final chapter. If your mind kept asking when, it is already moving toward resolution. But even these sentences are not commandments. They are invitations into states. Say the words only long enough to feel the direction. Then let the words rest, because what matters is what remains after language becomes faint. Suppose you say, I am supported. At first, it is a sentence, then perhaps an idea, then perhaps only a slight release in the body. The shoulders no longer seem responsible for holding everything together. Tomorrow does not disappear, but it becomes less threatening. That release is closer to the impression. Or you say, I am safe. At first the mind answers, but what about? Do not complete the argument. Return, I am safe. Eventually perhaps the sentence shortens. Safe. Then perhaps no word, only the absence of preparation. That too is an impression. The subconscious learns not only from what you dramatically feel, but from what you repeatedly cease to resist. This is why sleep is so useful. Your conscious mind has spent the day saying, but look at this, but remember that, but what if? As drowsiness approaches, you no longer need to answer every objection. You may let the courtroom close. No more witnesses tonight. No more evidence. No more cross-examination of tomorrow. You have selected the state. Let it remain. I want you to see how much programming has occurred in ordinary life without ceremony. A man loses something and thinks about the loss every night. He is teaching himself loss. A woman is praised but distrusts the praise and spends the evening wondering whether she deserved it. She is teaching herself doubt. Someone receives affection and immediately fears losing it. He is teaching himself impermanence. Someone has a good day and says, I wonder how long this will last. She is teaching herself that good must end. None of these people sat down and announced, tonight I shall program my subconscious negatively. They simply rehearsed what felt familiar. That is how it happens. And once you see this, you no longer need to fear the subconscious. You need only become more conscious of rehearsal. What are you rehearsing tonight? Not what happened. What are you rehearsing? The distinction is everything. Something happened at noon. It lasted 5 minutes. If you replay it for an hour tonight, the physical event is over, but the rehearsal is current. Something has not happened at all. If you imagine it repeatedly with fear, the physical event is absent, but the rehearsal is current. Your deeper mind receives what is current in consciousness. Therefore, choose the current experience. If you must rehearse, rehearse fulfillment. If you must remember, remember from the end. If you must anticipate, anticipate being supported. If the mind insists upon visiting tomorrow, let it visit a tomorrow in which you are capable, guided, loved, and steady. Do not spend the last moments of consciousness practicing the emotional posture you wish to leave behind. This is the key. Perhaps tomorrow really will require courage. Then fall asleep as one who has courage. Perhaps tomorrow requires an important conversation. Fall asleep as one who can speak clearly and remain secure. Perhaps tomorrow contains uncertainty. Fall asleep as one who does not need certainty in order to remain at peace. Perhaps a financial matter awaits you. Fall asleep as one who can meet it wisely. Perhaps nothing dramatic is happening at all. Then let the night be ordinary. You do not need a crisis in order to use imagination. You can simply practice being at home in your own mind. That may be one of the greatest changes of all. To enter sleep without being pursued by your own thoughts. To allow a question to remain unanswered without turning it into danger. To let another person have their own evening without mentally summoning them into yours. To allow tomorrow to remain tomorrow. And to let tonight become quiet. This is conscious programming in its simplest form. Not forcing an image upon the subconscious. Not shouting instructions into darkness. Simply refusing to make the old state the final state of the day. Perhaps all day you worried. You do not have to end in worry. Perhaps all day you felt rejected. You do not have to end in rejection. Perhaps all day you felt behind. You do not have to end in inadequacy. Perhaps all day you were uncertain. You do not have to end in fear. The final inner condition can be chosen even when the day itself was imperfect. This is where you recover authority. You cannot always choose what occurred today. You can choose what you continue to experience when the event is over. That choice becomes especially precious before sleep, because eventually conscious direction fades. The sentence dissolves. The scene becomes less clear. You cross from deliberate imagination into sleep. And so ask yourself before you cross, what am I carrying? A quarrel? Put it down. A prediction of disaster? Put it down. The face of someone who disappointed you? Let the face go. A figure you have already calculated 10 times? Close the ledger. A question that cannot be answered until morning? Let morning answer it. You are not required to escort every worry into sleep. Choose something worthy of the threshold. Perhaps only, all is well. Not because every detail has been solved, because you have decided that fear will not have the final word. All is well. Perhaps, I am supported. Perhaps, I know enough for tonight. Perhaps, the answer can come without my watching. That last one is useful. The answer can come without my watching. Life can move while you sleep. Other people can think without your supervision. Circumstances can rearrange without your anxiety. Tomorrow can approach without being interrogated. The bridge does not require an audience. Let it move. You have done enough for this day. The final impression need not be large. It only needs to face in the direction you choose. And if sleep takes you before you finish another repetition, let it. You were never trying to stay awake. You were learning what not to carry with you. The question is not whether you impress the subconscious before sleep. The question is what impression you leave upon it. So leave one that does not require watching, one that does not require effort, one that does not require an answer tonight. Supported, safe, valued, guided. complete enough to rest. Let the day grow farther away. Its conversations have ended. Its letters have been read. Its unfinished matters may wait. You no longer need to keep the lights on in every room of the mind. One by one, they may go dark. The argument can go dark. The ledger can go dark. The imagined rejection can go dark. Tomorrow's fears can go dark. Nothing is lost by allowing the night to be night. One light remains, the state you have chosen, quiet, simple, familiar enough to carry. And before even that light fades into sleep, let the final meaning be one you would willingly teach yourself again. I am supported. I am safe. I do not need to know everything tonight. The day is finished. And what I carry forward, I choose. Before sleep takes you completely, I want you to notice the story you are telling yourself about this day, not the list of things that happened, the story beneath them, because an event may be brief, but the meaning you give it can remain for hours. A letter does not arrive. That is the event. Then the mind says, I am forgotten. An expense appears. That is the event. Then the mind says, I am never safe. Someone is quiet. That is the event. Then the mind says, I am losing them. Something takes longer than expected. That is the event. Then the mind says, nothing ever works for me. Do you see the difference? The fact entered. Then identity was added. And this is where I would have you become very careful. Events enter the mind as facts, but you decide whether they leave as identities. A fact may belong to 1 hour. An identity can be carried for years. The letter did not arrive today. That does not mean I am forgotten. The account requires attention. That does not mean I am unsafe. Someone was distant. That does not mean I am unwanted. A plan changed. That does not mean my life is always difficult. You may have made these translations so quickly that you no longer notice the moment when fact becomes story. The interpretation seems to arrive attached to the event, but it did not. Consciousness attached it. And what consciousness attaches, consciousness can loosen. Tonight, I want you to separate what happened from what you made it mean. This is one of the most liberating things you can learn. Suppose you are waiting for an important letter. Morning passes, nothing. Afternoon passes, nothing. Evening arrives, still nothing. What happened? No letter arrived today. That is all the senses can honestly report. But imagination may have written an entire chapter. They have forgotten me. They changed their mind. The answer must be unfavorable. I knew I should not have hoped. Things never happened for me. The postman carried no such sentences. You wrote them. And because you wrote them inwardly, they became the emotional content of the day. Then you lie down at night, carrying not the absence of a letter, but an identity of being forgotten. This is how a simple fact becomes programming. The subconscious is not being impressed by the empty letterbox. It is being impressed by what the empty letterbox came to mean inside you. That is why the last story matters. The day may end with no new letter, but consciousness does not have to end with, I am forgotten. You can let the fact remain a fact. No letter today. Then choose another meaning. The matter is still unfolding. Or, I do not need silence to mean rejection. Or even, I am remembered. The old mind may object, but there is still no letter. Yes, that is the fact. But facts and identities are different things. You can acknowledge one without becoming the other. This is not denial. Denial would say, a letter arrived when it did not. I am not asking you to do that. I am asking you not to turn absence into abandonment. There is a great difference. Suppose the event concerns money. An expense appears. Perhaps it is inconvenient. Perhaps it is larger than expected. Perhaps it requires thought. Very well. Attend to what must be attended to. But notice the speed with which consciousness may move from, this expense appeared, to, I am never safe. That second sentence contains an entire identity. Never. Safe. 2 words can turn one circumstance into a law. And the subconscious responds deeply to laws you repeatedly make about yourself. Perhaps you have done this for years. One unexpected cost appears. Then immediately, here we go again. Notice that phrase, here we go again. It seems harmless. But what does it imply? Repetition, familiarity, a cycle expected to continue. The event has already been placed inside an old story. Tonight, interrupt the story, not the practical responsibility. The story. The expense appeared. Very well. Then, I can deal with what is before me. That is another identity. Capable, supported, orderly. You may not know every answer yet. That does not matter. The subconscious does not require you to know the entire solution tonight. It receives the state from which you approach the matter. One state says, I am trapped. Another says, I can handle this. Which one do you wish to carry into sleep? That is the question. Someone was quiet today. Perhaps you know nothing more than that. Yet if your old identity expects abandonment, silence will be translated instantly. They are withdrawing. They are angry. They do not care. I have done something wrong. Again, what happened? Someone was quiet. Everything else may be interpretation, and interpretation is not insignificant. Interpretation becomes feeling. Feeling becomes expectation. Expectation becomes reaction. Reaction may become behavior. Then behavior can affect the very relationship you feared losing. This is how an inner story can become self-confirming, without any mysterious force being required. You expect rejection, so you become guarded. The other person feels the guard. They become guarded too. Then you say, you see, I knew they were withdrawing. But where did the sequence begin? Perhaps with the story attached to silence. This is why self-observation matters, not so you can blame yourself. Blame is another story. Observe so that you can choose. Someone was quiet. You do not know why. Leave the space open. Perhaps they may simply be tired. Perhaps this does not define our relationship. Perhaps I am secure enough not to invent an ending. That last sentence is powerful. I am secure enough not to invent an ending. You do not need to solve every silence before sleep. You are allowed not to know. This is a form of control over the subconscious that most people overlook. Not filling every blank with fear, leaving some blanks blank. You do not have to turn uncertainty into danger. You can allow uncertainty to remain incomplete. And when the night comes, you can choose completion inwardly, without pretending you know every external detail. The last story you tell yourself is not necessarily the last sentence you consciously repeat. It is the emotional meaning you allow to dominate. A person may repeat, I am safe, for 5 minutes and then spend the next hour imagining disaster. Which story was last? Not chronologically in words, psychologically. The story of danger. Another may say no affirmation at all, but after a difficult day she thinks, I handled what I could. Tomorrow will reveal the rest. Then she sleeps. Her last story may be capability and trust. This is why I keep bringing you back from words to state. Words can point. State is where you live. Suppose the day contained rejection. Perhaps someone said no. Perhaps an opportunity did not unfold as you wanted. The fact is real. No was said. But what story follows? I am a failure. That is not the same fact. I am never chosen. That is not the same fact. I always miss my chance. That is not the same fact. Those are identities built from one event. You do not need to pretend the rejection did not hurt. You are human. Disappointment may come. Let it come. But do not let disappointment name you. Feel the difference. I was disappointed today. That is temporary. I am disappointing. That is identity. One thing did not work. Temporary. Nothing works for me. Identity. This opportunity ended. Temporary. My opportunities always end. Identity. The subconscious learns the second kind of sentence because it defines what feels normal. So tonight, be careful with the words. Always. Never. Everyone. No one. They often reveal that one moment is being turned into a law. One person disappoints you. People always disappoint me. One difficulty appears. Nothing is ever easy. One mistake occurs. I ruin everything. One quiet evening. No one really cares. These are not observations. They are decrees. And if repeated long enough, they become the background from which thought rises. Choose new decrees, not ridiculous ones, not words you must strain to believe. Choose identities with room in them. This moment does not define me. I remain supported. I can learn. I can recover. I am still worthy. I do not need one event to tell me who I am. Those are strong because they do not require denial. They require authorship. Perhaps you made a mistake today. The old story says, I always do this. Pause. Do you? Or did you make a mistake today? The difference matters. One keeps the event in time. The other makes it part of identity. You can say, I made a mistake, and I can correct what can be corrected. That is a very different impression. Responsible, grounded, free. You do not need to romanticize the mistake. You do not need to pretend it was wonderful. You simply refuse to make it your name. Maybe you said something you regret. Then tomorrow, perhaps you apologize. Good, that is action. But tonight, do not lie in bed saying, I am terrible. That is not responsibility. That is identification. Better, I wish I had handled that differently. I will do better. Then perhaps imagine the conversation ending with understanding. The event becomes instruction rather than identity. This is how the subconscious can be guided without force. You are teaching it. I am capable of correction. That is a much healthier normal than I must be perfect or I am worthless. Perhaps the day contained embarrassment. You stumbled over a word, forgot a name, dropped something, walked into a room at the wrong moment. Someone laughed, or perhaps no one laughed, and you imagined they would. By night, the scene has grown. In memory, the room becomes larger, the faces more severe, the moment more permanent. But what actually happened? A human moment, that is all. Do not let the mind turn 3 awkward seconds into a lifelong identity. The story can be, that was awkward, and then finished. Not, I am awkward. Finished. This is one of the simplest forms of freedom. You stop turning verbs into nouns. You experienced fear. You are not fear. You experienced rejection. You are not rejection. You experienced scarcity. You are not scarcity. You experienced uncertainty. You are not uncertainty. You experienced failure in one attempt. You are not failure. The event happened within awareness. Awareness is larger than the event. And because you are awareness, you can choose what place the event occupies in the story of yourself. Perhaps it becomes a paragraph, not the title. Perhaps a sentence, not the conclusion. Perhaps a page already turned. This is where night gives you a beautiful opportunity. The day is becoming a closed book. Before you close it, notice whether you have accidentally written one painful event across the cover. Maybe 90% of the day was ordinary. One difficult conversation occurred, and now the whole day is called terrible. Perhaps you received kindness from several people. One person was distant, and now the whole day is called I am unwanted. Perhaps you handled many things well. One task went badly, and now the whole day is called I failed. This is not objective memory. This is selective authorship. If authorship is already occurring, then use it consciously. Do not lie to yourself. But do not reduce the whole of yourself to one scene either. Perhaps say, today contained difficulty, and I remained. Today contained uncertainty, and I am still here. Today contained an expense, and I can respond. Today contained silence, and silence does not define me. Today contained disappointment, and disappointment is not the end. These statements do not deny reality, they enlarge it. Fear always narrows the story. It takes one event and says, this is everything. Consciousness can widen the frame. There is more time, more possibility, more identity, more life beyond one day. Perhaps what seems final tonight will look very different in a week. You know this from experience. Think of how many things once felt enormous and now seem small. There were nights when you believed one problem would define your whole future. It did not. There were conversations you thought would never leave your mind. They did. There were worries that demanded your whole attention. Now you can hardly remember them. This is useful. It reminds you that tonight's interpretation may not deserve the authority you are giving it. You can say, I do not yet know the final meaning of this. That is a powerful sentence. I do not yet know the final meaning of this. A delay may protect you. A rejection may redirect you. A silence may mean nothing personal at all. An expense may lead you to wiser order. A mistake may teach you something that later becomes valuable. You do not have to force a positive interpretation immediately. Sometimes the most intelligent story is simply, this is not finished. Notice the relief in that. This is not finished. Then the subconscious does not receive catastrophe. It receives openness. And openness is far different from fear. Perhaps the last story tonight can be even simpler. I am still supported. The event occurred. Still supported. Someone was quiet. Still valued. An expense appeared. Still capable. A plan changed. Still guided. You made a mistake. Still worthy. This word still can be beautiful because it protects identity from circumstance. Still. The world moved. Still. Someone changed. Still. The answer has not arrived. Still. You remain. And your chosen state remains available. This is not stubbornness. It is stability. A ship may move with the waves and still retain its course. You do not need to become emotionally motionless. You only need a deeper direction. What story points you in that direction? Perhaps things can work out. Perhaps I am not forgotten. Perhaps I can be safe even before I know. Perhaps I am supported through change. Perhaps I do not need to turn one event into my identity. Choose one, then let it become the last meaning of the night. You may ask, but what if the old story returns while I am falling asleep? Let it return. You do not have to panic. Recognize it. Ah, there is the old ending. Then choose again. This is all. You are not graded on perfect mental control. You are practicing authorship. A writer may cross out a sentence more than once. That does not mean the manuscript is ruined. So if the mind says, I am forgotten, you may answer, no. A letter has not arrived. That is all I know. Then perhaps, I am remembered. If it says, I am never safe, you may answer, an expense appeared. I can deal with facts without becoming fear. Then, I am supported. If it says, I am losing them, you may answer, someone was quiet. I do not need to invent rejection. Then, I am secure in myself. This is how the story changes. Not through force, through precision. The old mind blurs fact and identity. You separate them. The old mind says, this happened, therefore this is who you are. You say, no. This happened, and I remain free to choose who I am. That is mastery. There is another subtle story people tell at night. I should have been different today. They review the day and imagine a better version of themselves, but with condemnation. I should have been calmer. I should have been more confident. I should not have worried. I should have known better. The desire to improve is fine. But notice whether improvement has become another form of rejection. The story beneath it may be, I am not acceptable as I am. Then even self-development becomes conflict. Instead try, I can choose differently next time. That is gentler and stronger. You do not need to hate the old self in order to outgrow it. The person who worried today does not need punishment. She needs another state. The person who reacted badly does not need endless shame. He needs awareness and correction. The person who carried fear into the evening does not need to be told, you have ruined everything. That itself would be another fear. No, the night is still open. Choose now. This is why the last story is so valuable. It is never too late in the day to choose another meaning. Perhaps the day was difficult until this very moment. Then let this moment be different. The fact may not change tonight. The letter may still be absent. The expense may still exist. The conversation may still have occurred. But the identity can change now. I am not forgotten. I am not ruined. I am not abandoned. I am not defined by one day. Then move beyond negation. I am remembered. I am capable. I am supported. I am secure. Keep it simple. The subconscious does not need a speech. It needs a stable impression. Perhaps your last story is, I am the one who is supported, even before all the evidence is visible. Good. Perhaps, I am the one who no longer makes uncertainty mean rejection. Good. Perhaps, I am the one who can let a day end. Very good. Because some people never let the day end. The clock moves into night, but psychologically they remain in the afternoon. Still in the conversation, still at the desk, still reading the letter, still hearing the tone, still looking at the figure. You are allowed to leave the day. This is important. You are allowed to say, that happened today, past tense. Not, that is happening now. If the scene is replayed vividly enough, the body may not know the difference. It reacts again. So close the scene. Put it where it belongs, today. Then choose what belongs to tonight. Perhaps tonight belongs to support, perhaps to safety, perhaps to forgiveness, perhaps to completion, perhaps only to rest. Do not let a temporary event steal the atmosphere of the entire night. Events enter the mind as facts, but you decide whether they leave as identities. Let the event leave as experience, not identity. Let the expense leave as something handled, not I am poor. Let the silence leave as incomplete information, not I am unwanted. Let the rejection leave as one closed door, not I am rejected. Let the mistake leave as instruction, not I am a failure. Let the difficult day leave as a day, not my life is difficult. Do you feel the difference? The first keeps movement possible. The second freezes movement into identity. Tonight, choose movement. Choose a story with room for tomorrow to be different. Perhaps I am learning another way to live. Perhaps I no longer need the old conclusion. Perhaps this day does not decide my future. Or perhaps the deepest one. I know who I am beyond what happened today. Let that remain. Who are you? Supported, valued, capable, loved, secure, not perfectly, not theatrically, simply inwardly chosen. And as the outer room grows quieter, let the day lose its power to define. The letter did not arrive. The story does not have to be abandonment. The expense appeared. The story does not have to be danger. Someone was quiet. The story does not have to be loss. A door closed. The story does not have to be failure. You are the storyteller, at the point where event becomes meaning, and you can stop now. Stop adding. Stop predicting. Stop turning one page into the whole book. Let the facts be small again. A letter, an expense, a silence, a delay, a mistake, a moment. Then let identity be larger. I am supported. I am safe. I am valued. I can meet tomorrow. This is the last story. Not because it is the loudest, because it is the one you choose to leave in the room when the others have gone. The day has spoken. Now consciousness speaks last, and what it says need not be complicated. I am still here. I am still supported. I am still free to choose. The day is over. The old story does not need another night. Let this be the meaning that remains. Control begins much earlier than most people imagine. It does not begin when you have finally succeeded in stopping every unwanted thought. It does not begin when fear never visits again. It does not begin when doubt has completely disappeared. It begins the moment you understand that a thought can appear without becoming your authority. This is the distinction I would have you make tonight. A thought is not a command simply because it entered consciousness. A feeling is not a prophecy simply because it moved through the body. A memory is not an identity simply because it returned. You have given too much power to arrival. Now begin giving more power to consent. You cannot prevent every visitor from knocking, but you can decide whom you invite to remain. Imagine your mind as a house. Throughout the day, many visitors come to the door. One is called fear, another is called doubt, another carries an old memory, another brings an imagined argument, another arrives with a warning about money, another whispers that someone may leave, another says that tomorrow will be difficult. You did not necessarily invite them. They knocked. That is all. And this is where many people become frightened. They hear the knock and immediately think, why is this thought here? I thought I had changed. Does this mean I still believe the old thing? Have I ruined my assumption? Then, without realizing it, they invite the visitor inside merely by arguing about why it arrived. The thought came for a moment. The resistance gave it an evening. Do not do this. A knock is not residence. You may hear fear knock and say inwardly, I know that voice. Then return to what you have chosen. You do not need to open the door and debate fear for an hour. You do not need to prove that fear is wrong. You do not need to demand that it leave the street forever. You simply do not offer it a room. That is control. Quiet selection. Suppose you have chosen the state. I am supported. Then tomorrow something unexpected occurs. Immediately a thought appears. Something is going wrong. That thought is a visitor. If you panic because it appeared, you give it significance. If you begin checking whether you still feel supported, you give it furniture. If you imagine 10 consequences, you make up a bed. If you repeat the fear for the rest of the day, you have handed it the key. But you could respond differently. Something unexpected happened. That is enough. Then, I remain supported. Perhaps you do not even need the sentence. You simply attend to the event without moving your identity into danger. The visitor knocked. You remained home. This is what I mean by selection. You do not select which thoughts are allowed to exist in the universe. You select which thoughts receive your inward agreement. That is a much gentler form of mastery. And because it is gentler, it can continue while you sleep. If mastery required constant vigilance, then the moment you became drowsy, you would lose it. But true selection does not require tension. It requires orientation. You know where you live. A stranger may knock upon your door at midnight. You do not suddenly forget your own address. In the same way, an old thought may arise while you are becoming drowsy. It does not mean you have returned to the old state. Perhaps the mind says, what if it does not work? You need not sit up inwardly and begin a defense. Let the question remain unanswered. Return to the chosen implication. It is done. Or, I am safe. Or, I am supported. Then let the night continue. There is another mistake I want to remove from you. Do not become guilty because you feel something you did not intend to feel. Emotion is movement. Sometimes old emotional habits rise before conscious choice has had time to intervene. You receive a letter and feel fear. You hear a certain name and feel sadness. Someone speaks in a particular tone, and irritation appears. The feeling came. Very well. Do not add, I should not feel this. Now you have fear and guilt, or sadness and self-judgment, or irritation and spiritual anxiety. One movement has become two because you condemned the first. Let feeling be information, not identity. You can say, this is what moved through me, not, this is what I am. Then select again. Perhaps the body takes longer than the mind to learn the new state. That is all right. You have practiced some reactions for years. If the body tightens automatically when money is mentioned, do not call yourself a failure. Notice it. Let the body settle. Then choose what you wish money to mean now. Order, capability, support, enough. If your chest tightens when someone becomes distant, do not say, there, I knew I was still abandoned. You have only discovered an old visitor who knows the road to your house. Do not give it permanent lodging. Let the feeling pass. Return to, I am secure. This is how the new normal becomes stronger without becoming violent. I would rather have you return gently 100 times than fight yourself once with tremendous force. Force creates an enemy. Selection creates direction, and you do not need enemies within yourself. Suppose you are walking along a road and realize you have taken the wrong turn. Would you sit down and condemn yourself for the next 2 hours? Perhaps not. You would turn. That is all. You do not need to hate the wrong road. You simply stop traveling it. This is how I want you to treat old mental patterns. Notice, turn, continue. If you catch yourself imagining rejection, turn. If you catch yourself rehearsing financial disaster, turn. If you catch yourself imagining an argument that has not happened, turn. Not dramatically. Do not announce, I must stop this terrible thought. Just select another road. This is control. The person who understands selection no longer becomes terrified of the mind. She can allow thoughts to exist without marrying them. There is freedom in that. Perhaps an old memory returns tonight. It may carry pain. You do not need to suppress it. Let it appear. But ask, does this memory receive the right to define my present identity? No. You may learn from it. You may revise it. You may forgive where forgiveness is appropriate. You may establish practical boundaries in life because of what you learned. But you do not need to turn memory into residence. The house belongs to the present state you choose. Perhaps the old memory says, you were rejected. The new state says, I am valued. Both can exist as information, But only one needs to become identity. Perhaps the memory says, you once failed. The new state says, I am capable. The event does not need to be erased for the identity to change. This is important because many people think control requires pretending that nothing painful ever happened. No. Control means the past no longer receives automatic authorship over the present. That is far more mature. A man can remember poverty without living as poverty. A woman can remember heartbreak without living as abandonment. Someone can remember failure without living as failure. The memory belongs to history. The state belongs to consciousness now. Selection decides which one becomes home. You cannot prevent every visitor from knocking, but you can decide whom you invite to remain. Let this line relieve you, because perhaps you have been afraid of your own mind. You were afraid that one unwanted thought might undo everything. You were afraid that one moment of doubt might destroy your progress. You were afraid that one difficult emotion meant the subconscious had rejected the new state. No, the subconscious is not so fragile. What becomes deeply impressed is not usually one passing moment. It is what is repeatedly welcomed, rehearsed, and treated as normal. So if fear visits once, let it visit. If doubt visits, let it pass through the hall. If sadness needs a chair for a moment, perhaps let it sit. You are human. But do not hand every visitor the deed to the house. The house is yours. This is where discernment enters. Sometimes a thought deserves practical attention. If you remember that a bill must be paid, attend to it. If you realize you owe someone an apology, make it. If the body gives a signal that requires care, seek proper care. Selection is not ignoring reality. It is separating useful information from unnecessary identity. The thought, I must make that payment tomorrow, may be useful. The added story, I will never be financially safe, is not required. The thought, I should speak honestly with that person, may be useful. The added story, they are going to abandon me, is not required. The thought, I should seek advice about this condition, may be wise. The added story, my life is ruined, is not required. This is how you remain grounded while directing consciousness. You do not become careless, you become precise. You ask, what must be acted upon? Then, what am I merely rehearsing? Act upon the first, release the second. Perhaps your mind has spent years confusing worry with responsibility. It says, if I stop worrying, I will become careless. But worry and care are not the same. Care can be calm. Responsibility can be clear. Wisdom can act without panic. A man may lock his door at night because that is sensible. He does not need to sit awake until morning imagining burglars. The action is complete. The fear is optional. A woman may prepare carefully for an important meeting. She does not need to spend the night imagining every possible embarrassment. Preparation is useful. Rehearsed failure is not. Learn this difference, and your mind becomes much easier to inhabit. You no longer attempt to eliminate thought. You learn to rank it: useful, unnecessary, temporary, old, chosen, unchosen. A thought may be loud and still be unchosen. A chosen thought may be quiet and still be powerful. Do not confuse volume with authority. Fear often shouts. Knowing often whispers. I am supported. Perhaps that sentence feels quieter than the old warning. Let it. Truth in consciousness does not require noise. A king does not need to shout his title every minute. He knows where he sits. Let your chosen state become like that. Quiet. Established. You may hear other voices. They do not move the throne. This also means you do not have to answer every contradiction. Suppose you assume, I am valued. Then an old thought says, but remember when they overlooked you. You could argue for 20 minutes, or you could simply remain, I am valued. No defense. The old thought offers evidence. You do not need a trial. You have selected the state. That is enough. Suppose you assume, I am secure in love. The mind says, but what if they change? Again, you do not have to produce guarantees. Security is not the promise that another human being can never change. It is the state in which your worth is not destroyed by uncertainty. Return there. I am secure. That is deeper than controlling someone else. Suppose you assume, I am supported. The mind says, but you do not know how this problem will be solved. Correct. You may not know. Support does not require knowing the entire bridge. It requires refusing to make ignorance mean doom. I do not know how yet, and I remain supported. That is a powerful form of control, because you have stopped requiring certainty as the price of peace. Do you see how selection simplifies the mind? You no longer need to monitor every sentence. You need only notice where you are leaning, toward danger, toward support, toward rejection, toward belonging, toward catastrophe, toward capability. You do not have to inspect every leaf when you know which direction the tree is growing. If you notice the direction becoming old and familiar, gently turn. This is enough. There will be moments when the old state feels stronger. Do not interpret strength as truth. A habit may be strong because it is practiced. A path through a field becomes clear because people walk it often. The grass is worn down. That does not mean it is the only path. Walk another often enough, and another path appears. At first, the new path may feel awkward. The grass is high. You must pay attention. Later, it becomes easier. Eventually, you may walk it without conscious effort. That is how a new assumption becomes normal. You are not trying to destroy the old path tonight. You are simply choosing where you place your feet. This is why guilt is so unnecessary. If you accidentally step onto the old path, you have not failed. Turn, return, continue. Perhaps tomorrow you catch yourself saying, "Nothing ever works for me." Good, you noticed. Then select, "That is an old road. Perhaps things can work for me." Or, "I am supported." Then continue with the day. No punishment, no long ritual. The faster you stop making an old thought important, the less furniture you give the visitor. A guest becomes comfortable when constantly entertained. Do not entertain the thought you do not wish to make home. You need not be rude to it. You need not fight it. You simply stop serving it dinner every night. Let it leave. This metaphor of the house can help you deeply before sleep. Imagine that the day has sent many visitors, some pleasant, some difficult, some useful, some unnecessary. Now it is late. The house must become quiet. Who remains? Do you allow worry to stay in the sitting room all night? Do you give rejection the bedroom? Do you leave financial fear pacing the corridor? Do you let an old argument keep the lamp burning? Or do you say inwardly, "The house is closing for the night"? One by one, let the visitors leave. The argument may go. Tomorrow's uncertainty may go. The person whose behavior you have been analyzing may go. The unpaid bill does not need to sleep beside you. The awkward moment does not need a room. Let them all leave the psychological house. If practical matters return tomorrow, you can meet them then. Tonight, residence belongs to the state you select. Perhaps support remains. Perhaps peace. Perhaps security. Perhaps only, "I am all right." Let one state stay, not as a guard, as the occupant. The house is quiet. This is control without strain. Now perhaps you understand why trying to suppress every negative thought can create anxiety. Suppression says, "This thought is dangerous." Then the mind becomes fascinated by whether the dangerous thought will return. It listens for footsteps. It checks the door. It becomes vigilant. But selection says, "This thought does not interest me as residence." Then attention returns elsewhere. There is much less drama. You are not frightened by the knock. You know who owns the house. This is the relationship I want you to develop with consciousness, not fear of thought. Authority over consent. The difference is enormous. You may even begin welcoming awareness of old patterns, because each moment of recognition gives you a choice. Before, the visitor entered unnoticed. Now you see it at the door. That is progress. Do not say, "I cannot believe this thought is still coming." Say, "Now I recognize it sooner." Awareness itself is part of mastery. At first, perhaps you notice an old thought after an hour. Later, after 10 minutes. Later, almost immediately. Eventually you may feel the old road beginning before the thought is fully formed. Then you choose another direction. This is how selection becomes natural. Not through force, through recognition. And the state you select repeatedly becomes the one that receives the longest invitation. Perhaps the new visitor is support. At first, support feels unfamiliar. You let it sit for a few minutes. Then the old anxiety returns. Fine. Invite support again tomorrow. And again. Eventually support knows where the chair is, then where the lamp is, then where the cups are kept. Soon it no longer feels like a visitor. It feels like family. Then one night you realize, I do not have to invite support anymore. It lives here. That is how an assumption becomes residence. Perhaps being valued becomes residence. Perhaps being safe becomes residence. Perhaps expecting good becomes residence. At that point, an old fear may knock and seem strange. You may even think, I remember when I used to live from that. This is the transformation. The old normal becomes the visitor. The new state becomes home. And you did not accomplish it by defeating your mind. You accomplished it by repeatedly deciding what was worthy of your consent. This is why the word control should become softer for you tonight. Control is not clenching. Control is choosing, not gripping, choosing, not policing, choosing, not punishing, choosing, not demanding perfection, choosing again. You can choose while tired. You can choose after a difficult day. You can choose even when emotion has not yet caught up. You can choose without having every answer. That is why this form of mastery can accompany you towards sleep. Even now, if an old thought passes through, let it pass. No ceremony, no alarm. You cannot prevent every visitor from knocking, but you can decide whom you invite to remain. So ask quietly, who remains tonight? Fear? No need. The argument? It may leave. Tomorrow's uncertainty? It may wait outside until morning. The old financial warning? You have heard it enough. The old rejection? No room tonight. What remains? Perhaps only, I am supported. Let support sit in the quiet house. Perhaps, I am safe. Let safety remain. Perhaps, I am valued. Let value remain without needing another person to say so. Perhaps, I am guided. Let the road remain unknown, while guidance remains known. This is enough. You are not emptying the mind by force. You are choosing the final occupant. And as the house grows quieter, you may no longer hear every knock. Good. You do not need to. The door is not your concern all night. You have already chosen where you live. Let the visitor of peace remain. Let the visitor become resident. Let the resident become normal. And when thought eventually grows quiet in sleep, there is no battle left to continue. Only the state you allowed to stay. There is a sentence beneath your life that you may never have spoken aloud. You may not have written it anywhere. You may not even know that you believe it. Yet it quietly appears in the way you expect tomorrow to unfold, in the meaning you give to silence, in the way you receive opportunity, in the speed with which you recover from disappointment, and in what you assume must happen whenever life becomes uncertain. Tonight, I want you to discover that sentence. Not 20 sentences, not a catalogue of every belief you have ever held. One sentence. The sentence beneath the sentences. If your life had one invisible sentence beneath it, what would that sentence be? Do not answer from what you wish were true. Listen for what has felt true. Perhaps beneath many years of effort there has been. Nothing comes easily for me. You may never say it directly, but whenever something good appears, you expect a complication. Whenever a door opens, you wonder what price will be demanded. Whenever a plan begins smoothly, some part of you waits for the difficulty. Then when difficulty eventually appears, as difficulties sometimes do in every human life, you recognize it immediately. There, I knew it. The sentence has found another witness. Perhaps your invisible sentence has been, I always have to prove myself. Then every room becomes an examination. You do good work, but you cannot rest in having done it. You must do more. Someone appreciates you, but the appreciation expires quickly in your own mind. You need another demonstration, another achievement, another sign that you deserve your place. You are not merely working. You are continually appearing before an invisible judge, and perhaps that judge has not existed anywhere outside your own assumption for many years. I always have to prove myself. Imagine carrying such a sentence into every relationship, every opportunity, every success. Even good becomes tiring when it must constantly justify your existence. Perhaps the sentence is, People eventually leave. Then affection itself may awaken fear. The more important someone becomes, the more carefully you watch. You notice changes in tone. You measure distance. A quiet afternoon can feel more threatening than an obvious disagreement because uncertainty gives the old sentence room to speak. People eventually leave. Then you may begin protecting yourself before anything has happened. You withdraw slightly. You become cautious. You ask questions whose real purpose is reassurance. You prepare for an ending while standing inside a beginning. The sentence is not merely describing relationships. It is teaching consciousness what relationship is expected to become. Or perhaps the sentence is, there is never enough. Not merely money. Enough time. Enough opportunity. Enough attention. Enough love. Enough room. Enough chances. Enough life. When never enough sits beneath consciousness, even abundance can be received through scarcity. A full table does not satisfy the person who is already worried about tomorrow's meal. A loving relationship does not feel secure to the person counting how much affection was given yesterday compared with today. An opportunity does not feel expansive to the person thinking it may be the last opportunity ever offered. The invisible sentence changes the meaning of possession. This is why I want you to find the sentence, not merely chase the objects. If you change the object while keeping the sentence, the old state may simply follow you into the new circumstance. More money arrives, but there is never enough remains. Recognition arrives, but I must prove myself remains. Love arrives, but people eventually leave remains. Opportunity arrives, but nothing comes easily remains. You have changed the scenery while keeping the script. Tonight we are interested in the script. If your life had one invisible sentence beneath it, what would that sentence be? Listen without fear. You are not searching for something with which to accuse yourself. You are searching for something you are ready to understand. There is no shame in discovering an old sentence. Many were written before you knew you were writing. Some came from repeated experience. Some from people whose own fears became familiar to you. Some from childhood interpretations formed before you possessed the understanding you have now. Some arose from disappointment and remained long after the event ended. You do not need to decide who is guilty for the sentence. You only need to decide whether it will continue to be yours. Perhaps you discover, I am always the one who waits. Notice what this would do. You want something, and immediately imagine distance. You send a letter, and become the one waiting for an answer. You make a request, and become the one waiting for permission. You love, and become the one waiting to be chosen. You work, and become the one waiting to be recognized. The objects differ. The identity remains. I am the one who waits. Then perhaps the real change is not another technique for making something arrive faster. Perhaps the change is, I am the one who receives. Feel how different those two sentences are. Waiting organizes consciousness around absence. Receiving organizes it around arrival. This does not mean that every physical event occurs instantly. It means you no longer build your identity around being perpetually outside the answer. Perhaps your old sentence is, I am always on my own. Then every burden seems more personal. Help may be available, but you hesitate to ask. Someone offers assistance and you say, no, I can manage. You manage. Again and again. Then later you feel unsupported. The sentence has quietly organized the behavior that confirms it. What might another sentence be? I am supported. Simple. Not, someone will rescue me from every difficulty. That is not what support means. Support may appear through your own clarity, through another person, through wise advice, through an opportunity, through the courage to say no, through the ability to solve what once overwhelmed you, through proper assistance when assistance is needed. I am supported. Leaves room for life to cooperate with you. Perhaps you have already begun to hear the difference between an affirmation and a governing sentence. An affirmation may be something you say. A governing sentence is something you think from. If the sentence beneath you is, life supports me, you may not repeat it constantly. But when a plan changes, you do not automatically assume catastrophe. When one road closes, you remain available to another. When you need assistance, you can receive it without feeling diminished. When you do not yet know the answer, uncertainty does not immediately become abandonment. The sentence produces a family of reactions. That is why one deep assumption can influence so many areas at once. Think of a line of music played softly beneath an entire performance. The melody above it changes. Different instruments enter. The tempo moves. Yet beneath them, there is one continuing note, giving character to the whole composition. Your invisible sentence can function in the same way. You may have hundreds of conscious thoughts in a day, but beneath them, one quiet refrain continues. Be careful. Do not expect too much. You must earn your place. Something always goes wrong. Or perhaps, I always find a way. Life supports me. I am naturally valued. Good can happen without a struggle. I can trust myself to meet what comes. Which refrain has been playing beneath you? Do not search only in moments of crisis. Look at what you assume during ordinary moments. Suppose someone gives you a sincere compliment. What happens immediately? Do you receive it, or does the invisible sentence answer, they are only being polite? Perhaps beneath that reaction is, I am not really valuable. Suppose something works more easily than expected. Do you enjoy the ease, or do you become suspicious? Perhaps beneath that is, good must be difficult to be real. Suppose an opportunity appears. Does some part of you think, this could be for me? Or, people like me are not usually chosen? There is the sentence. Suppose you make a mistake. Does the mind say, I can correct this? Or, this proves I am incapable? There is the sentence. You can discover your predominant assumption by observing what meaning arrives fastest. Not because the fastest meaning is necessarily true, because it is practiced. And what is practiced can be changed. Perhaps your sentence is not entirely negative. Maybe you have already cultivated one that serves you. I always find a way. Notice the strength of such a sentence. It does not promise a life without obstacles. It says obstacles do not receive the final word. A door closes. I always find a way. A plan changes. I always find a way. A problem requires patience. I always find a way. The sentence does not dictate the way. It assumes one exists. That is a powerful subconscious normal. Or, life supports me. Again, not, every event must please me. Rather, I am not abandoned by life because one moment is difficult. Or, I am naturally valued. Not, everyone must praise me. Rather, my worth does not wait for every room to vote upon it. These are stable sentences because they do not require control over everyone else. They change your relation to experience. Tonight, I would have you choose such a sentence carefully. Do not choose the most magnificent statement you can invent. Choose the one that changes the deepest expectation. If your whole life has felt like proof and examination, perhaps your sentence is, I belong. Just that. I belong. What would happen if belonging became the hidden sentence beneath your days? Perhaps you would still prepare well, but preparation would no longer mean begging for admission. Perhaps you would still improve your work, but improvement would come from expression rather than fear. Perhaps you would enter a room without silently asking whether you are permitted to be there. I belong. One sentence. A different life can grow from a different premise. If your old sentence is, nothing comes easily for me, perhaps do not rush to its theatrical opposite. Everything always comes effortlessly and perfectly. The deeper mind may immediately argue. Choose something inhabitable. Life can work with me. Feel that. Life can work with me. Not against me by definition. With me. A conversation can go well. A solution can be simpler than expected. Help can appear. Timing can cooperate. An opportunity can be natural. You are allowing ease into the range of what feels possible. Later perhaps the sentence becomes, good comes naturally to me, but begin where you can dwell. If your old sentence is, there is never enough, perhaps the new one is, I am provided for. Not extravagance, provision. A state large enough to include wise financial action, care, responsibility, and increasing room. I am provided for. How does the person who lives from that sentence meet an expense? Not necessarily with delight, with less catastrophe. How does she think about tomorrow? With greater room. How does she receive? without immediately imagining loss. That is the sentence becoming active. If your old sentence is, people eventually leave, perhaps the new one is not about controlling any particular person. Choose, I am secure in love. That returns the state to you. I am secure in love. You can love without making fear the chaperone. You can receive affection without interrogating it every hour. You can maintain boundaries without believing boundaries mean abandonment. You can let relationships reveal their proper form without reducing your value to another person's behavior. I am secure in love. There is dignity in that sentence. If the old one is, I always have to prove myself, perhaps my value is already established. What would change if that became normal? Maybe you would stop over-explaining. Maybe you could receive appreciation without immediately trying to earn the next portion. Maybe rest would no longer feel dangerous. Maybe criticism could become information rather than a verdict. My value is already established. Again, the sentence need not make you arrogant. True value does not require superiority. You do not need another person beneath you in order to stand. Your value is not a contest. Choose a sentence that makes you freer, not grander. This is important. The best assumption is not always the one that sounds most impressive. It is the one from which a healthier, calmer, more fulfilled version of you can actually live. Perhaps, I can trust myself. Maybe that one sentence touches everything. You have doubted your decisions, second-guessed your feelings, looked outside yourself constantly for permission. Then, I can trust myself. Not, I will never make another mistake. Trust does not require infallibility. It means if you make a mistake, you can learn. If new information appears, you can adjust. If help is needed, you can seek it. Self-trust is not stubbornness. It is the end of perpetual inward suspicion. Perhaps, I am safe to expect good. This can be especially powerful for someone who has learned to protect against disappointment by expecting the worst. Some people believe pessimism protects them. If I expect nothing, I cannot be hurt. But the protection has a cost. It asks you to suffer the disappointment before the event has even occurred. Perhaps tonight you release that bargain. I am safe to expect good. Good may surprise me. Good may stay. Good does not have to be followed immediately by punishment. I am safe to expect good. Let the sentence be gentle enough that you can sleep with it. That matters. You are not selecting a battle cry. You are selecting a foundation. Foundations are quiet. They sit beneath everything. No one walks into a house admiring the foundation every 5 minutes. Yet the whole structure depends upon it. Your sentence can become like that, quietly beneath the day. You do not need to repeat it every minute tomorrow. But when circumstances tempt you into the old story, remember what now sits beneath you. Suppose the new sentence is, I always find a way. Tomorrow something becomes complicated. The old line rises, nothing ever works. Pause, then remember the foundation. I always find a way. Not necessarily immediately, not necessarily by the route I expected, but I find a way. Then attend to the next sensible step. This is how assumption and action cooperate. You do not sit motionless demanding that imagination do what practical wisdom asks of you. You act. But you act from another premise. Suppose the sentence is, life supports me. Then support may include your own action, writing the letter, making the appointment, seeking advice, doing the work, changing direction, resting when rest is needed, saying yes, saying no. The state does not remove participation. It changes the psychological position from which participation begins. This is why I want a sentence broad enough to live through ordinary life, not a sentence that collapses the first time something inconvenient happens. A good governing assumption has room for humanity. I am supported, can survive a difficult afternoon. I belong, can survive someone disagreeing with you. I am secure in love, can survive an imperfect conversation. I always find a way, can survive not knowing the way tonight. That is strength, not the absence of movement, a state stable enough to contain movement. Now return to the central question. If your life had one invisible sentence beneath it, what would that sentence be? Perhaps something immediately arose when I first asked. Trust that recognition. You may have heard, I am always behind. Perhaps, then see how many experiences have been arranged around that assumption. Comparing your timeline, feeling late, rushing, believing another person's success is evidence against your own. Perhaps you are tired of living from behind. What is the new sentence? I am on my own path. Or perhaps, my life unfolds in its right time. Choose whichever feels more alive. If the old sentence is, I have to struggle, perhaps, I am allowed to be supported. Notice the word allowed. Maybe support itself feels unfamiliar. Begin there. I am allowed to be supported. Then perhaps later, I am supported. You are building naturalness, not forcing language. If the old sentence is, I am overlooked, perhaps, I am naturally valued. Let that sentence enter slowly. I am naturally valued. You do not chase recognition. Value exists before recognition. You do not need to become louder to exist. You do not need to convince every person. I am naturally valued. Perhaps that sentence brings a quiet release. Good. That release may tell you that you have touched something deep. Now do not immediately add 10 more affirmations. Stay. The mind loves to collect. It thinks more statements mean greater control. But tonight we are simplifying. One sentence, one foundation, one refrain beneath the music. Let the other statements go. If your sentence is, I am supported, you do not also need 20 explanations of how. Just, I am supported. If, I belong. I belong. If, I always find a way. I always find a way. If, I am naturally valued. I am naturally valued. Let it become less like something you are trying to convince yourself of, and more like something you are trying on as a new way of standing. What would it be like to stand upon that sentence? Not shout it. Stand upon it. Imagine the sentence beneath your feet like solid ground. I am supported. You stand. No need to prove the floor. It holds. I belong. You stand. The room does not need to applaud. I am naturally valued. You stand. One person's opinion cannot remove the ground beneath you. I always find a way. You stand. The road ahead can still bend out of sight. This is how a sentence becomes state. It moves from the mouth beneath the feet, from something you say into something you stand upon. And as night advances, perhaps you no longer need the whole sentence. If the chosen sentence is, I am supported, perhaps eventually only supported. If, I belong, perhaps only home. If, I am secure in love, perhaps only secure. Do not deliberately shorten it yet if the full sentence feels useful, but know that eventually language can become meaning. Meaning can become atmosphere. Atmosphere can become normal. And normality is what the deeper mind learns most readily. Tonight, therefore, do not search for a magical phrase. There is no magic in vocabulary divorced from state. The power is in what you consent to let the sentence mean about you. Perhaps you have spoken the old sentence 10,000 times without words. Tonight you speak the new one once with understanding, then again softly. Then you begin living from it inwardly. That is enough for now. If your life had one invisible sentence beneath it, what would that sentence be? And now, more importantly, what sentence will you permit to remain beneath it from this night forward? Choose carefully. Choose kindly. Choose something spacious enough to become home. Then let the old sentence lose its position beneath you. You do not need to erase every memory associated with it. You do not need to argue with all the evidence it collected. Simply stop using it as the premise of the next chapter. Let another premise begin. Life supports me. I always find a way. I am naturally valued. I belong. I am secure. I can expect good. Choose one. Let it become quiet. Let it settle beneath the surface, not as something you must keep saying forever, as something that may eventually begin speaking through the way you meet life. A different first reaction, a different interpretation, a different kind of courage, a different permission to rest. And perhaps one day, when you look back, you will realize that the visible changes began much earlier than you thought. They began when the sentence beneath your life changed. When nothing comes easily was no longer given the final word. when I must prove myself lost its office. When people eventually leave, stop being your definition of love. When there is never enough, stop being the flaw beneath every decision. And another sentence took their place, quietly, repeatedly, naturally, until it no longer felt like something you were practicing. It felt like the way you lived. Let that new sentence remain near you tonight, not above you as an instruction, beneath you as ground. There are two words you have used all your life that deserve far more attention than you have given them. I am. They seem ordinary because they are so familiar. You say them without ceremony. I am tired. I am worried. I am late. I am unlucky. I am unwanted. I am behind. Yet every time you place something after I am, you are doing more than describing a passing condition if you accept the statement deeply enough. You are naming yourself. And the name you repeatedly give yourself becomes a place from which consciousness begins to think. This is why I would have you treat I am with reverence, not superstition, reverence, because I am is the doorway of identity. Before you say what you possess, before you say what happened, before you say what anyone else thinks, there is the simple awareness, I am. Existence first, definition second. You are aware that you are. Then you place a garment upon that awareness. I am successful. I am forgotten. I am secure. I am alone. I am capable. I am afraid. The pure awareness is clothed in a description, and if the garment is worn often enough, you begin forgetting that it was ever a garment. You begin calling it your skin. This is how identities become convincing. A person says, I am unlucky. At first, perhaps she is speaking about one event. Then another inconvenience occurs. I am unlucky. Another disappointment. I am unlucky. Soon she no longer means something unfortunate happened. She means this is the kind of person I am. And from that identity, the mind begins selecting evidence. A missed train becomes proof. A delayed letter becomes proof. A closed door becomes proof. Someone else's good fortune becomes comparison. The phrase has moved from description into residence. This is why language matters, when language becomes identity. But do not misunderstand me. I am not telling you to become frightened of ordinary speech. If you say one evening, I am tired, you have not cursed yourself. You are capable of describing a temporary condition. The danger is not in every casual sentence. The deeper question is, what have you repeatedly agreed to be? There is a difference between, I feel tired tonight, and, I am the kind of person who is always exhausted. Between, I experienced rejection, and, I am unwanted. Between, I am facing a financial difficulty, and, I am poor. Between, I do not yet know what to do, and, I am helpless. One describes a moment, the other begins naming the self, and consciousness tends to defend the names it accepts. If you call yourself incapable, you will interpret uncertainty through incapability. If you call yourself unwanted, you will interpret silence through rejection. If you call yourself unlucky, you will interpret coincidence through misfortune. The name becomes a lens. Then eventually you say, life keeps proving this to me. But life may be reflecting the identity through which you have been reading it. Tonight, I want you to become more careful about the name. Not the name given to you by your parents, the inward name, the one spoken after I am. What have you been calling yourself? Perhaps, I am behind. This is a common identity. Not merely, I have not yet reached a certain goal, but, I am behind. Behind whom? Behind what universal schedule? The mind rarely answers. It simply carries the identity. Then another person succeeds, and you feel late. A birthday passes, and you feel late. A plan takes longer than expected, and you feel late. You look at one area of life and translate it into a statement about your whole existence. I am behind. What if the better identity were not some dramatic claim of superiority? What if it was simply, I am on my path, or I am guided, or I am not late for my own life? Notice the relief in that. You are not pretending time does not exist. You are refusing to make comparison your name. Perhaps the old identity is, I am unwanted. This one can be very deep. A person may carry it into rooms where she is genuinely welcomed. Someone treats her warmly and she wonders how long it will last. Someone chooses her and she wonders whether they will change their mind. Someone praises her and she questions the sincerity. The outer evidence may contradict the old identity, but the identity continues interpreting the evidence until even affection becomes suspicious. Then perhaps the new name is I am wanted. Simple. Not everyone must want me. That is not necessary. I am wanted means I no longer build identity from exclusion. I can belong somewhere without apologizing for occupying space. I can receive affection without immediately preparing to lose it. I can allow myself to be chosen without turning choice into a temporary accident. I am wanted. But remember what I told you before. Do not merely place new words after I am. Place a new identity there. This is the central movement. You can say, I am wanted, while inwardly feeling, please let someone prove it. Then the words are standing outside the state. The phrase is correct. The identity is still waiting. So ask, what would it mean to actually occupy I am wanted? How would that person hear silence? How would she enter a room? How would she receive an invitation? How would she interpret another person's temporary distraction? How would she speak to herself after a mistake? The answer to those questions begins revealing the identity behind the words. If I am wanted is real inwardly, perhaps you no longer need everyone to reassure you. The identity itself becomes reassurance. This is why I am is so powerful when understood properly. You are not attempting to place a decorative phrase upon the surface of thought. You are deciding what being itself will wear. I am. Then what? Supported, secure, wanted, capable, at peace. These are not merely affirmations, they are positions, and each position produces a different relationship with the same world. Imagine two people receiving the same uncertain news. One has deeply accepted, I am helpless. The other, I am capable. The event is identical. The immediate interpretation is not. The first may think, I will not be able to handle this. The second, I may not know everything yet, but I can respond. Same circumstance. Different I am. Imagine two people experiencing the same delay. One lives from, I am forgotten. The other from, I am secure. The first fills the silence with abandonment. The second allows the silence to remain silence. Same delay, different identity. This is why changing the name changes so much more than one thought. You are not correcting the branches. You are changing what tree you believe yourself to be. Perhaps you have been saying, I am unlucky. Then tonight ask, what is the deeper desire beneath that? Maybe not luck at all. Maybe you wish to feel that life can cooperate with you. Then perhaps, I am supported. That is stronger. Support can arrive in many forms. Timing, help, insight, a useful conversation, a closed door that saves you from the wrong road, an unexpected opportunity, the ability to remain calm while making a wise decision. I am supported does not demand that every event feel pleasant. It gives you another relationship with events. Perhaps you have been saying, I am weak. Maybe the new identity is, I am capable, not invincible, capable. There is dignity in that word. Capable means, I can meet what comes. I can learn. I can ask for help when wisdom requires it. I can correct myself. I can change course. I can make decisions without needing perfect certainty. I can survive not knowing everything tonight. I am capable. This state is strong precisely because it does not require fantasy. It requires self-trust. Perhaps your old name has been, I am anxious. Again, there may be times when anxiety is a real experience. Do not shame yourself for feeling it. But do not let a recurring condition become the total name of consciousness. Maybe tonight, I am at peace. At first, the body may not fully agree. That is all right. You are not ordering every nerve to obey immediately. You are introducing a new identity. What does I am at peace mean tonight? Perhaps only, I do not need to solve tomorrow. Perhaps, I can let one unanswered question remain unanswered. Perhaps, I do not need to rehearse danger. Perhaps, I can lie here without preparing for every possible outcome. Peace may begin as permission. That is enough. Do not demand that peace feel dramatic. The quietest state may be the deepest. I am at peace. Then allow the sentence to become less verbal. What does peace feel like when it is not trying to prove itself? Perhaps like nothing chasing you. Nothing that must be answered now. No internal courtroom. No debate. No performance. That atmosphere is closer to the identity than the phrase itself. Do not merely place new words after I am. Place a new identity there. You can test this with any statement. Say, I am supported. Then ask, if this were my identity, what would no longer feel necessary? Perhaps constant worry, perhaps over-explaining, perhaps believing that every problem must be solved alone, perhaps refusing help because receiving feels unsafe, perhaps imagining that one closed road means all roads are closed. Then you begin to understand support. Say, I am secure. If this were identity, what would change? Perhaps one person's mood would not define the whole relationship. Perhaps uncertainty would not immediately become danger. Perhaps good news would not be followed by suspicion. Perhaps you could make a mistake without believing you have lost your place. Security is not the end of every human emotion. It is a deeper flaw beneath emotion. Say, I am wanted. What would no longer be necessary? Perhaps auditioning for love. Perhaps proving why someone should choose you. Perhaps reading every silence as rejection. Perhaps comparing yourself with everyone who enters the room. Wantedness becomes something you occupy, not something you beg another person to manufacture. Say, I am capable. What disappears? Perhaps helplessness as an identity. Not every problem. Helplessness as an identity. Say, I am at peace. What disappears? Not every decision. The belief that peace must wait until all decisions are finished. This is how you go beneath affirmation. You ask what kind of self the words imply. Then you begin occupying that self. There is another reason I am deserves such attention. Whatever follows, it tends to gather memory around itself. If you say, I am unlucky, the mind can quickly produce a catalogue of unlucky events. It becomes a librarian, searching the shelves for evidence. There was that year, that rejection, that missed opportunity, that loss. The identity calls for proof, and memory obeys. But if you begin accepting, I am supported, another kind of remembering can begin. The time someone helped unexpectedly, the door that opened after another closed, the problem you survived, the idea that came at the right time, the fact that you are still here after situations you once thought impossible. The mind can gather evidence for another name too. Do not force this process. Simply notice what the new identity allows you to see. This is important because identity affects attention, and attention affects experience. If you accept, I am valued, you may finally notice appreciation you previously dismissed. If I am capable, you may notice how many things you already handle each day without ceremony. If I am supported, you may notice resources that fear caused you to overlook. This does not mean the outer world becomes magically perfect because of a phrase. It means the state reorganizes perception, interpretation, action, and expectation. And in Neville's language, the state is fundamental. I am is the door into state. Now consider how often you have attached temporary conditions to permanent identity. I am broke. Perhaps what you really mean is, my finances are limited at present. That can be addressed. But I am broke turns the condition into self. Perhaps choose, I am becoming financially ordered. Or, deeper, I am provided for. Then act responsibly from that identity. Make the necessary decisions. Seek proper advice if needed. Do not use spiritual language to avoid arithmetic. But also do not use arithmetic to condemn your being. A number is not your name. I am is larger than the account. The same with the body. You may be experiencing pain or illness that deserves care, but be cautious about turning the condition into the total definition. I am broken. No. The body may need treatment, rest, attention, medical assistance, but consciousness can still occupy. I am supported. I am cared for. I am moving toward greater ease. Do not turn responsible care into identity with illness. The state you choose can coexist with practical action. The same with grief. You may be grieving. Do not deny grief. But perhaps you do not need to say, I am alone forever. That is another claim entirely. One is an honest human experience. The other is a prophecy. This is the discipline of I am, not policing vocabulary. Learning when experience has secretly become identity. Perhaps tonight you notice how often you say, I am the kind of person who. Be careful there. That phrase is a builder of states. I am the kind of person who always gets nervous. I am the kind of person people overlook. I am the kind of person who never has enough. These sentences sound like self-knowledge, but some forms of self-knowledge are merely rehearsed history. You are allowed to know yourself differently. Maybe, I am the kind of person who finds a way. I am the kind of person who can receive good. I am the kind of person who learns quickly. I am the kind of person who is treated with respect. But even here, do not become trapped in wording. Go to the identity. Perhaps you need only, I am supported. Then stay with it. Do not hurry to add a second statement. Let supported open. What does it include? You are not alone against life. You do not need every answer tonight. You are allowed to receive. You can meet what comes. The road may reveal itself. Help may exist. Your own intelligence may serve you. Support is broader than one source. Remain there. Or, I am secure. Let security open. No need to check. No need to monitor every silence. No need to believe that good is always about to disappear. You can be human without losing your foundation. Remain. Or, I am wanted. Let it open. No audition. No pleading. No comparison. No need to become smaller to remain loved. No need to become someone else to deserve presence. Remain. Or, I am capable. Let capability open. Not perfection. Response. Adaptation. Learning. Courage. Wisdom. Remain. Or, I am at peace. Let peace open. Tomorrow can wait. The unanswered can wait. The world can move without your supervision. Remain. This is how one phrase becomes a state rather than a slogan. You dwell in its implication. And as you dwell, something begins to change. The statement becomes less exciting. Good. It becomes less foreign. Better. Eventually it may become so ordinary that you no longer feel the need to repeat it. Best of all, because then I am has accepted another garment. You do not constantly announce what you already know yourself to be. The identity carries itself. This is what you are moving toward, not a lifetime of endless repetition, a new normal. Tonight, however, perhaps the words are useful. So choose them carefully. Do not choose 5. One is enough. What name do you most need to stop giving yourself? Unlucky? Unwanted? Behind? Helpless? Unsafe? Forgotten? And what name would be freer? Supported? Secure? Wanted? Capable? At peace? Choose. Then do something very simple. Say, I am. Pause inwardly. Before completing it, notice the openness. I am. Pure awareness. Not yet poor. Not yet rejected. Not yet successful. Not yet loved. Not yet afraid. Just, I am. There is immense freedom in that pause, because for a moment, none of the old adjectives have been attached. I am. Existence without the old story. I am. Then select, supported. I am supported. Or, secure. I am secure. Or, wanted. I am wanted. Or, capable. I am capable. Or, at peace. I am at peace. Let the new word arrive as though you are choosing a garment from a quiet room. You do not need to burn the old clothes. Simply stop wearing them to bed every night. Tonight, another garment. Perhaps it fits awkwardly at first. That is normal. You have worn the old identity for years. A new garment may feel strange simply because it is new. Do not confuse unfamiliarity with falseness. Wear it. Sit in it. Let it become warm from your own presence. Eventually, it will feel more like yours. This is the gentleness of assumption. You are not forcing yourself to become someone else. You are releasing definitions that were never the whole of you. At the deepest level, before every definition, you are I am. Awareness. the capacity to occupy states. This means no single state has the right to call itself your permanent nature. You have been afraid, but you are not eternally fear. You have been rejected, but you are not rejection itself. You have struggled, but you are not struggle. You have been uncertain, but uncertainty is not the essence of I am. States are occupied, and what can be occupied can be left. This is why the statement, I am supported, is more than positive thinking when truly understood. It is consciousness moving residence. I am secure, another residence. I am wanted, another residence. I am capable, another residence. I am at peace, another residence. You are selecting where I am will sleep tonight. Perhaps that is the simplest way to think of it. Where will I am sleep? At I am behind? No. That house has kept the lamps burning long enough. At I am unwanted? No. You know every room there. At I am unlucky? No. You do not need another night rehearsing misfortune. Where then? I am supported. Stay there. I am secure. Stay there. I am at peace. Stay there. And if an old definition knocks, remember what you learned. It may knock. It does not receive the room. Perhaps the old voice says, but you do not feel supported. You need not argue. Feelings can learn, remain. But you are still uncertain. Perhaps, and still, I am secure. But nothing outside has changed yet. That is not the question tonight. The question is, what identity do I consent to occupy? Do not merely place new words after I am. Place a new identity there. Let the sentence become quieter now. I am supported. Not a declaration to the world, a recognition within. I am supported. I am secure. Choose only one if you can. There is no need for a procession of words. One identity is enough to accompany the night. Perhaps, I am at peace. Then the mind says, are you? Do not answer with an argument. Simply let peace mean, I am no longer debating tonight. That itself is peace. I am at peace. The day may have been imperfect. Still, I am at peace. Tomorrow may contain questions. Still, I am at peace. The body may carry some tension. Still, I am at peace beneath the tension. You are teaching the deeper mind that identity can be more stable than a passing condition. This is one of the deepest uses of I am. You are no longer letting circumstance complete the sentence for you. The world says, there was a delay. You do not answer, I am forgotten. The world says, someone disagreed. You do not answer, I am unwanted. The world says, money is tight. You do not answer, I am doomed. The world says, you made a mistake. You do not answer, I am incapable. Circumstance may speak, but I am remains yours to complete. That is authority, quiet authority, not control over every event. Control over identification. And perhaps this is the true doorway to the subconscious. You stop asking every event to tell you who you are. You decide what name will be carried beneath the event. Supported, secure, wanted, capable, at peace. Let one become yours tonight. Say it once, then again more softly. And perhaps the third time you do not say it at all. You simply know what name you have chosen. I am. Then silence. The identity remains. There comes a point in this work where trying harder begins to take you farther from the state you wish to occupy. This surprises many people. They believe that if an affirmation is good, then repeating it more forcefully must be better. If one imaginal act is useful, then perhaps 10 will be more powerful. If a desired state does not immediately feel natural, they assume they must push harder against the old one, and so they begin an inward struggle. I am loved. Again. I am loved. Louder inwardly. I am loved. Again and again, while beneath the words another voice is whispering, please let this become true. Do you see the contradiction? The sentence says possession. The effort says absence. The words say, I am loved. The hidden emotional posture says, I am trying desperately to become loved. And the deeper mind receives more than vocabulary. It receives the posture. This is why I want you to stop trying to convince yourself. You are not standing before a jury. You do not need to produce evidence. You do not need to win a debate. You do not need to overpower an opposing counsel living inside your own head. The subconscious is not persuaded by shouting. It is impressed by acceptance. Acceptance has a very different sound, sometimes no sound at all. You know what it is like to accept something as true in ordinary life. Someone tells you that dinner will be at 7. You believe them. What happens next? Do you repeat, dinner is at 7, dinner is at 7, dinner is at 7, with increasing emotional intensity? No. You accept the information. It becomes part of your expectation. You arrange yourself around it naturally. If someone asks when dinner will be served, you answer, 7. There is no strain because the fact has been admitted. This is the quality I want you to understand, acceptance, not effort. Suppose you desire to feel supported. The old method says, I must make myself believe I am supported. Notice the problem already contained in that sentence. I must make myself believe. One part of you becomes the persuader, another becomes the skeptic. Now there are two of you in the room. The whole night becomes a negotiation. The persuader says, you are supported. The skeptic says, prove it. The persuader produces examples. The skeptic produces counterexamples. Back and forth. The body grows more alert. Sleep moves farther away. And the state of support has become another battlefield. Try something else. What if this were simply true of me now? No demand, no command, a question with room in it. What if I were supported now, not tomorrow, not when everything is solved, now? What if support were not something I had to manufacture, but something I could permit myself to assume? Notice how differently the mind receives that. It does not have to surrender under force. It is invited to enter another possibility. Perhaps for 1 second, resistance softens. 1 second is enough. You feel, what if I really did not have to carry everything alone? There. Do not immediately grab the feeling and demand that it stay. Let it be. The seed does not need to be dug up the moment it touches the soil. Acceptance often enters through a door too small for force. This is why gentleness can accomplish what strain cannot. You may have spent years telling yourself that change requires tremendous effort. Perhaps that itself has become an assumption. I have to work hard even to change my mind. Then every inner practice becomes another labor. Tonight, question that. What if the new state could be received rather than conquered? What if peace could be allowed rather than manufactured? What if being loved could be entertained as a fact rather than argued as a case? What if support could be rested in before it is perfectly proven? These questions loosen the old grip. They do not insist, they open. Suppose you have chosen, I am secure. You say it once. The mind immediately answers, no, you are not. Do not panic. Do not repeat the sentence 50 times merely to drown out the objection. Listen carefully. The objection may only mean, this is unfamiliar. That is very different from, this is false. The mind often calls unfamiliarity disbelief. It has lived so long with one state that another feels strange. Strangeness is not a verdict. If you moved into a new house tonight, the hallway would feel unfamiliar. You might reach for a light switch in the wrong place. You might awaken briefly and forget which room you are in. Would you conclude, this cannot be my house because it does not yet feel familiar? No. You would live there. Naturalness would come. Treat the new state the same way. I am secure. Perhaps it feels new. Fine. Do not demand instant familiarity. Live there for a few moments. What if security were simply true of me now? How would this bed feel? How would tomorrow feel? Would I need to solve every possible problem tonight? Perhaps not. Would one unanswered matter be allowed to remain unanswered? Perhaps. Would I need to inspect someone else's behavior again before sleeping? Perhaps not. There. You are beginning to experience security rather than merely pronounce it. This is the difference. An affirmation can become useful when it becomes a doorway into experience. It becomes exhausting when it becomes a weapon against yourself. Do not use beautiful words as weapons. I am loved should not be swung at the head of I am unwanted. You do not need an inner battle between two sentences. Move into the experience of being loved. Ask, if I were already loved, What would I stop doing right now? Perhaps you would stop checking. Perhaps you would stop imagining rejection. Perhaps you would stop mentally calling someone into the room to make them reassure you. Perhaps you would simply allow the night to be quiet. Then let the quietness itself become the affirmation. No words, only nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to ask. That may be closer to I am loved than repeating the phrase with desperate intensity. This is why acceptance can be so quiet that you almost overlook it. You expected a great emotional moment. Instead, there is simply less resistance. You expected certainty to arrive like thunder. Instead, a question stops bothering you for a few minutes. You expected a powerful sensation. Instead, you notice that you are no longer arguing. Do not underestimate the end of argument. The end of argument is often the beginning of possession. Think again of something you already know to be true about yourself. Perhaps you know where you were born. Perhaps you know your own name. Perhaps you know the sound of a familiar voice. You do not force these facts upon yourself. You do not create emotion around them. They are accepted. The subconscious is deeply acquainted with accepted facts. So rather than asking, how strongly can I feel this? Ask, how little do I need to argue with it? That is a better measure tonight. Perhaps, I am supported. Can you let the sentence remain for 10 seconds without immediately producing a contradiction? If yes, good. Perhaps 5 seconds. Good. Perhaps only one. Still good. Do not despise 1 second of genuine acceptance. 1 second without argument is different from 5 minutes of forced repetition. You are teaching the mind another relationship with the idea. And if resistance appears, you do not need to destroy it. You can soften the statement, not weaken it. Soften the doorway. Instead of, I am completely, absolutely, permanently secure in every possible way. Perhaps, I can allow myself to feel secure now. That may enter more easily. Or, what if security belongs to me more naturally than I have assumed? Or, I am learning what it feels like to be secure. These are not lesser truths if they move you into the state. Language should serve assumption. You should not become the servant of language. Some phrases fit one person beautifully and create resistance in another. Do not worship the phrase. Seek the state. If I am wealthy makes you immediately think of every financial difficulty, perhaps go beneath the word wealth. What do you actually desire? Room, order, relief, choice, provision. Perhaps I am provided for. Say it. Does something soften? If so, remain there. Or perhaps my affairs are becoming orderly. Maybe this feels more inhabitable tonight. Good. You are not trying to impress an audience with the boldness of your affirmation. No audience is present. You are finding the sentence that allows acceptance to occur. Eventually, as the state becomes familiar, the language can become simpler and stronger. At first, I am learning to feel supported. Then, I am supported. Later, perhaps no words, only support. This is not compromise. It is movement toward naturalness. The same principle applies to love. Perhaps, I am deeply loved, produces immediate protest because the old state is loud. Do not fight. Ask, what would it feel like if love were safe for me? Maybe the word safe opens a better door. Love is safe for me. Or, I can receive love without fear. Perhaps that is the bridge. Then eventually, I am loved. Do you see? You are not lowering the end. You are reducing unnecessary friction on the road into it. The subconscious learns through what is accepted, not through what is shouted. A quiet yes is more useful than a loud sentence followed by an inward no. Find the yes. Perhaps the yes is very small tonight. That is enough. Suppose you desire success. You say, I am successful. Immediately the mind shows you everything unfinished. Do not begin a trial. Ask instead, what if I already belonged in the life I desire? That question may lead somewhere deeper. Belonging. Maybe success was never mainly applause. Maybe you wanted the end of feeling like an outsider. Then, I belong. How does that feel? Perhaps much quieter, more direct. The old mind may still object, but now you are closer to the actual state. I belong. No need to impress anyone. No need to perform success in imagination. Simply belonging. Acceptance grows where the state is clean. Sometimes an affirmation fails to settle because it contains something you do not truly desire. Perhaps you imagine wealth, but secretly picture exhibition and comparison. Then part of you resists because that image does not feel like you. Go deeper. Maybe you desire freedom, time, comfort, generosity, stability. Choose those meanings. Perhaps you imagine recognition, but attach it to everyone finally regretting how they treated you. Then consciousness remains attached to old hurt. Go deeper. Maybe you desire respect, meaningful work, a place to contribute, belonging. The more honest the state, the less persuasion is required. This is an important principle. You do not need to convince yourself to desire what is genuinely meaningful to you. You need to release the old assumption that says it is not available to you. And even there, release is often more effective than attack. Suppose the old voice says, "People like you do not have lives like that." Do not shout back. Ask, "Who decided what people like me are allowed to experience?" Perhaps no answer comes. Good. The old belief has been exposed as an inherited sentence, not divine law. Then, what if I am allowed to live differently? There, a little more room. What if my past does not have to be the blueprint? More room. What if good could become normal for me? More room. You are loosening identity from history. This is powerful precisely because it is not violent. The old assumption expected battle. You give it no battle. You simply stop treating it as unquestionable. Imagine a door that has been locked for so long that everyone in the house assumes the room beyond it cannot be entered. One evening you discover the door was never locked. It was merely swollen in the frame. You do not need dynamite. A gentle pressure opens it. Many inner doors are like this. You assumed force was necessary because the door had not moved before. But perhaps you were pushing in the wrong direction. Convincing pushes. Acceptance opens. There is another sign that you are trying too hard. You keep asking, "Do I believe it yet?" This question can become endless. You say, "I am supported." Then, "Do I believe that?" You examine the feeling. Maybe, you repeat it. "Do I believe it now?" You inspect again. Soon you are not living in support. You are conducting an examination about belief. Stop examining. If you planted a seed in the earth, you would not measure it every 15 minutes. Let the assumption remain unobserved for a while. You do not need to feel belief as a physical object. Sometimes belief is simply what you stop questioning. Say, "I am supported." Then move into a small imaginal scene from support. Perhaps you hear a trusted person say, "Everything worked out." You answer, "Yes." End. Do not ask, "Did I believe that enough?" Return if you enjoy it. Then sleep. You are allowing the impression to exist without interrogation. This is why the state akin to sleep will become so important as we continue. As the reasoning mind becomes less interested in debate, acceptance becomes easier. But you do not need to wait until complete drowsiness to begin learning this. Even now, reduce the pressure. Nothing in you needs to be defeated before sleep. You are not trying to achieve a perfect mind tonight. You are choosing a gentler relation to your own imagination. Perhaps you have treated the subconscious as though it were a stubborn child who must be told the same thing until it finally submits. I would change that image. Think instead of a quiet room in which music is being played. If two songs are played at once, loudly competing, the result is confusion. So stop increasing the volume. Choose one melody. Let the other finish. Then allow the chosen melody to remain softly in the room. This is acceptance. One tune, repeated naturally. Eventually it becomes the atmosphere. You do not need to shout over the old music. You stop playing it. That is enough. Perhaps your old tune has been, "I am not enough." You do not need to scream, "I am enough," until the walls shake. Perhaps instead, "What if I stopped measuring my worth tonight?" Feel that. No measurement, no comparison, no trial. Then perhaps, "I am enough." Now the sentence may enter a quieter room. This is how context changes acceptance. Or if the old tune is, "I am alone," Perhaps, what if I allowed myself to feel supported for this one night? Not forever. This one night. The mind may accept one night more easily than eternity. Good. Feel supported tonight. Tomorrow can take care of tomorrow. You are establishing a state, not signing a contract with doubt. You can return again and again until one night the phrase, for this one night, is unnecessary. Support has become familiar. This is how real change often happens. Not through one dramatic conquest, through many moments in which you stop rehearsing the opposite. That phrase matters. Stop rehearsing the opposite. If you affirm love and then spend the next hour rehearsing rejection, the issue is not that you failed to say I am loved enough times. The issue is where imagination actually lived. So instead of adding more affirmation, remove some rehearsal. Do not imagine the argument. Do not imagine the abandonment. Do not imagine the financial catastrophe. Do not imagine the rejection letter. If the mind begins, gently leave the scene. Then perhaps nothing needs to replace it immediately. Silence can be useful. A quiet mind is better than a beautiful affirmation spoken over an active disaster. Then when the space feels open, place one chosen implication there. I am safe. Simple. The subconscious can receive simplicity. You do not have to fill every moment. This is especially useful for sleep. The night should gradually contain less argument, less language, less management, less technique. You are moving towards sleep, not toward a mental performance. If the affirmation keeps you awake, simplify it. If the scene keeps you analyzing, shorten it. If the words produce effort, move into meaning. Perhaps I am loved becomes loved. Then perhaps only the feeling that no one needs to be chased. I am supported becomes supported. Then perhaps only the sense that tomorrow does not have to be carried tonight. I am secure becomes secure. Then perhaps no word at all, only the absence of checking. This is the direction, from statement to acceptance, from acceptance to naturalness, from naturalness into sleep. Do not fear the fading of words. The goal was never to keep repeating until morning. The goal was to let the state sink beneath conscious effort. The subconscious is not persuaded by shouting. It is impressed by acceptance. And acceptance often looks like this. You stop asking whether the statement is true. You stop examining whether you feel enough. You stop demanding evidence. You stop arguing with the old voice. For a few moments, you simply let the new state be. That is enough to begin. Perhaps tonight your chosen identity is, I am at peace. Do not try to manufacture peace. Ask, what am I doing right now that the peaceful version of me would no longer need to do? Maybe thinking about tomorrow. Then stop for one moment. Maybe replaying a conversation. Let it end. Maybe waiting for someone inwardly. Let them leave the room. Maybe trying to perfect this practice. Let that go too. And what remains? Perhaps a little more quiet. There is peace, not produced, uncovered, or I am secure. What unnecessary behavior can end now? Checking, predicting, preparing for rejection. Let one end. There is security. Or I am capable. What can end? The sentence, I cannot handle this. You do not need to know exactly how you will handle everything. Only, I can meet the next thing when it comes. There is capability. The state often appears when its opposite is no longer constantly maintained. This is why letting go can be more powerful than adding. You may not need another affirmation. You may need one less argument, one less rehearsal, one less demand, one less attempt to make yourself believe. Then perhaps belief has room to breathe. You are not required to make the subconscious accept everything tonight. You are establishing a relationship with it. A relationship in which you no longer send one message with words and another with desperation. You begin aligning them. The sentence says, I am supported. The posture says, I can rest. Now they agree. The sentence says, I am loved. The posture says, I do not need to chase. They agree. The sentence says, I am secure. The posture says, I can allow one uncertainty. They agree. This agreement is much deeper than repetition. It is coherence, and coherence feels quiet. Perhaps the mind says, but I still have doubts. You may have doubts. Let them exist at the edge. You do not need 100% intellectual certainty to experience 10 seconds of a new state. Take the 10 seconds, then another later. Naturalness will grow. The demand for total conviction is another form of perfectionism. Release it. You do not need perfect belief. You need a direction you are willing to revisit. That is all. If tonight you can move from, I must make myself believe, to, what if this were simply true of me now? You have already changed the relationship. What if I were supported now? What if I were secure now? What if I were already worthy now? What if love did not need to be earned tonight? What if I were allowed to stop preparing for disappointment? Do not answer loudly. Let the question create the space. Maybe the answer is a small inward yes, then no more. Yes, perhaps. Yes, this can be true of me. Yes, I can rest here. That is enough. You are not convincing yourself. You are consenting. And consent is quiet. The old state may still be nearby. You do not have to throw it out dramatically. Just stop giving it the center of the room. Let the new state sit there, perhaps awkwardly at first, then more naturally. You are not asking it to perform, only to remain. I am supported. No argument. I am secure. No examination. I am loved. No demand for proof. I am at peace. No attempt to feel spectacular. Then perhaps even the words become unnecessary. You know what they mean. Let meaning remain. And as the mind becomes less interested in convincing itself, it also becomes less interested in staying awake. That is good. You have nothing to win tonight. No opponent. No inner debate. No belief that must be conquered before sleep comes. There is only a state you are willing to allow. A state you can enter softly. A state that does not need to shout because it is learning how to feel like home. There is very little left for you to do now. Perhaps one familiar voice remains for a moment in imagination. You do not need to see the person clearly. You know the presence. You know the voice. It asks nothing from you. It does not come to test you or to make you explain yourself. It simply notices something that has already changed. You seem so peaceful. And you answer, I stopped fighting myself. There is a quiet pause. The voice asks, and now? You do not search for an impressive answer. You do not explain the law. You do not explain the subconscious. You do not explain what you practice tonight. You simply say, now I know. That is all. Now I know. The person seems to understand. Nothing more needs to be said. Perhaps there is a faint smile. Perhaps a hand rests upon yours for a moment. Then the person leaves. The imagined footsteps become softer. The door closes gently. And now even that scene can disappear. You do not need it anymore. The conversation has finished. The room is quiet. You remain. Not the old you who was trying to make the mind obey. Not the old you who was searching every thought for danger. Not the old you who believed that peace must be earned through constant mental effort. You remain as the one who has chosen. That is enough. You do not need to control every thought. You have chosen the state. You do not need to correct every memory. You have chosen the state. You do not need to follow every feeling to its conclusion. You have chosen the state. The old voice may speak once more if it wishes. Let it grow tired. The old argument may rise faintly. Let it lose interest. The old question may knock. There is no need to answer. The house is quiet now. You know where you live. The old voice may rest. The old argument may rest. The old examiner may put down the papers. The old watcher may leave the window. The one who checked everything may close the ledger. The one who imagined tomorrow again and again may let tomorrow remain unopened. The one who kept trying to become worthy may stop proving. The one who kept trying to become secure may stop guarding. The one who kept trying to become loved may stop asking. There is nothing more for these old roles to do tonight. Let them rest. The day is finished. Whatever happened earlier belongs to earlier. The conversation is finished. The letter is finished. The expense is finished for tonight. The unanswered matter is finished for tonight. The mistake is finished for tonight. The uncertainty is finished for tonight. Nothing needs another rehearsal. Nothing needs another interpretation. Nothing needs to become your identity before morning. The day is finished. You are not repairing yourself. There is nothing here that must be repaired before you are allowed to sleep. You are not persuading yourself. There is no jury. There is no debate. There is no hidden part of you that must be defeated. You are simply allowing the new identity to remain. That is all. Remain. Not by holding tightly, not by concentrating, not by repeating until you become exhausted, simply by no longer returning deliberately to the old place. You have chosen the state. Let it sit quietly beside you. Perhaps the state is support. Then you do not need to describe support. You know enough. Perhaps the state is security. You do not need to prove security. Perhaps the state is love. No one needs to declare it again. Perhaps peace. No explanation. You have chosen. Now let the state be more natural than the words used to describe it. I am supported. Let the sentence come gently. I am supported. No need to ask how. No need to name every person. No need to know which door opens first. I am supported. The road may remain unseen. Support remains. The next step may be unknown. Support remains. Tonight may contain no visible evidence at all. Support remains. I am supported. Perhaps those words become softer. Supported. You know what they mean. You do not carry everything alone. You do not need to solve every future event before rest. You may receive. You may be guided. You may find what is needed when it is needed. Supported. Now, I am safe. Do not make safety mean that nothing in human life can ever change. Let it mean that you are not required to live in constant preparation for danger. I am safe. Safe enough to stop predicting. Safe enough to leave one question unanswered. Safe enough to let the night remain empty of tomorrow. Safe enough to close the inward door. Safe enough to stop listening for footsteps. I am safe. Perhaps only. Safe. There is less to explain now. Safe. The body does not need to understand the word. Let it simply receive the absence of demand. Safe. I am loved. Do not summon anyone to prove it. Do not ask anyone to remain in imagination. Let love exist without witnesses. I am loved. Loved without pleading. Loved without auditioning. Loved without comparison. Loved without checking whether love is still present every few moments. Loved as a state. Loved as something that can become ordinary. Loved. You do not need to chase what you already accept. You do not need to call it toward you. You do not need to force another person to behave in order to give the state permission to exist. I am loved. Loved. Quietly loved. I am secure. No inspection. No testing. No need to pull tomorrow toward you and ask what it intends to do. I am secure. One circumstance may move. Security remains. One person may have a mood. Security remains. One decision may take time. Security remains. One door may close. Security remains. Your identity does not need to move with every movement around you. I am secure. Secure. Perhaps you have spent a long time believing that expecting good made you vulnerable, as though disappointment could be prevented by rehearsing it first, as though fear could protect you by arriving before the event. You no longer need that bargain tonight. It is safe to expect good. Let the phrase be gentle. It is safe to expect good, not to demand perfection, not to insist that every event unfold according to one plan. Simply to stop believing that the unknown must be hostile. It is safe to expect good. Good may come quietly. Good may arrive through ordinary means. Good may take forms you could not have arranged. You do not need to know. It is safe to expect good, and because it is safe, you do not need to watch. I do not need to watch. The door can remain unwatched. The letter can arrive without being mentally summoned. The answer can develop without your attention resting upon it every minute. Another person can live their life without being continually called into your imagination for reassurance. The future can move while you sleep. I do not need to watch. No watchman tonight. No lamp in the tower. No one pacing the wall. The gate may be quiet. You are allowed to sleep. I do not need to force. Nothing is being held together by your tension. Nothing becomes more certain because you strain. Nothing becomes more worthy because you remain awake over it. I do not need to force. If tomorrow requires movement, you may move. If tomorrow requires a decision, you may decide. If tomorrow requires work, you may work. But this moment requires none of it. I do not need to force. The machinery can remain silent. The bridge can remain unseen. The road does not need your hand upon every stone. I do not need to force. I do not need to solve tomorrow. Perhaps that sentence brings the greatest relief. I do not need to solve tomorrow. Tomorrow has not arrived. You cannot solve a day that has not yet appeared. You can only exhaust tonight by attempting to live tomorrow too early. Let tomorrow keep its secrets. I do not need to solve tomorrow. Whatever needs thought can receive thought in its proper hour. Whatever needs action can receive action in its proper hour. Whatever needs courage can meet the courage available then, but not now, not here. I do not need to solve tomorrow. Tonight is smaller, quieter. Enough. The subconscious may receive what I have accepted. You do not need to push anything down into it. You do not need to force open a hidden door. You have accepted a state. Let that be enough. The subconscious may receive what I have accepted: support, safety, love, security, peace. No pressure, no command. The impression is there. You can stop touching it. You can stop examining whether it has been received. You can stop asking whether you performed correctly. The subconscious may receive what I have accepted. And now I am at peace with the state I have chosen, not checking it, not improving it, not replacing it with something more dramatic. At peace with the state I have chosen. Perhaps tonight the state feels only slightly different from the old one. That is enough. Perhaps only one part of you feels quiet. Enough. Perhaps there is no great emotion at all. Enough. You do not need a sign. You do not need an inner light. You do not need a sensation in the body. You do not need to know that anything special has occurred. You have chosen. Now rest. I am at peace with the state I have chosen. At peace, chosen. Enough. Let the words begin to have more room between them. Supported, secure, loved, safe, quiet. Nothing else needs to be built around them. Supported, secure, loved, safe, quiet. Perhaps the mind wanders. Let it wander a little. You do not need to bring it sharply back. When you remember, return gently. Supported, safe, quiet. The words do not need to remain in order. There is no correct sequence. Loved, supported, secure, quiet, safe. Each one points to the same inward permission. You may stop fighting. You may stop guarding. You may stop trying to become. You may rest as supported. The whole weight of tomorrow does not belong upon your shoulders now. Secure. One unanswered question cannot remove the floor beneath you. Loved. No one needs to enter the room to prove it. Safe. Nothing must be predicted. Quiet. No argument remains. Perhaps now there is only safe, supported. Home. Safe, supported. Home. Let home mean the state, not a building, not an address. The inward place where you do not have to audition. Home. Nothing to prove. Home. Nothing to chase. Home. No need to explain yourself to the night. Home. You have returned to yourself without the old definitions. Safe, supported, home. The outer room may be almost forgotten now. Perhaps you know where you are physically. Perhaps you do not care very much. That is fine. The bed is there. The room is there. The night is there. You need not attend to them. You can let the edges grow softer. Safe, supported, home. You may hear a distant sound. It belongs to the distance. No need to follow. You may feel the body adjust. Let it adjust. No need to inspect. You may notice a thought beginning. It does not need to finish. Let unfinished thoughts remain unfinished. Nothing requires conclusion now. You are already in the conclusion that matters. Supported, safe, home. The old voice may be very faint now. Perhaps it says, "But what if?" And then perhaps even it forgets what it wanted to ask. Good. No answer. The old voice may rest. The old voice may sleep too. You do not need to exile it. It was only an old habit of protection. It can stop working. Nothing needs it tonight. The old argument may rest. The one who defended you can put down the case. The one who predicted disappointment can close the book. The one who measured your worth can forget the numbers. The one who searched for proof can stop searching. No more proof. No more case. No more measurement. No more prediction. only this. Safe, supported, home. Perhaps there is a little more silence now. Let the silence remain. You do not need every space filled with words. Silence is not absence, it can be completion. Nothing to add, nothing to explain. Silence, and beneath the silence, I am. No adjective needed for a moment. I am. Before the fear, before the old story, before the old sentence, I am. The rest can become very simple. I am safe. I am supported. I am loved. I am secure. Then perhaps I am, and nothing more. No need to finish the sentence every time. I am. Awareness without struggle. I am. No old name required. I am. Then the words may fade. You do not need to retrieve them. The meaning remains. Already. Perhaps this is the word now. Already. You are not traveling toward the state. Already. You are not persuading yourself to enter it. Already. You are not waiting for permission. Already. No distance. Already. Perhaps whatever you wanted to change no longer needs to be named. You have gone beneath the object. Already. The mind may ask, already what? No answer needed. Already. The implication understands itself. Already accepted. Already chosen. Already home. Already. Safe. Let the word be small. Safe. Nothing dramatic. Safe. No performance. Safe. No audience. Safe. Enough to let go. Already. Safe. Then. Peace. Not something to produce. Peace. The absence of argument. Peace. The end of watching. Peace. The end of persuasion. Peace. The permission not to know. Peace. Already. Safe. Peace. Perhaps now the word sleep can be allowed near you without becoming an instruction. Sleep. Not something you must make happen. Sleep. A direction already beginning. Sleep. The mind does not need to follow every word. Sleep. No need to reach. Sleep. Already. Safe. Peace. Sleep. Perhaps the words become more distant. Already. Safe. Peace. Sleep. And if you no longer hear each one clearly, that is all right. Nothing has been lost. You do not need to stay awake to receive the rest of the words. The words are becoming less important. The state remains supported, secure, loved, safe, quiet. Perhaps only safe, quiet, home. Perhaps home, peace. Perhaps peace. You are not required to remember what you wanted earlier. Let the desire become distant. For this moment, no manifestation, no goal, no future seeing, no question about what will happen. Only the state beneath all of it, supported, loved, safe. You may forget the object and keep the meaning. That is enough. Perhaps money once represented safety. Keep safety. Perhaps love represented belonging. Keep belonging. Perhaps success represented value. Keep value. Perhaps a new beginning represented freedom. Keep freedom. But even these ideas may now be too much. Let them simplify. Safe, home, peace. No need to carry the names of desires into sleep. No need to carry techniques. No need to carry instructions. No need to carry Neville. No need to carry the sound of this voice. Let everything that helped you reach the state become unnecessary now. You can leave the ladder once you are on the roof. You can leave the bridge once you are across. You can let the words go once their meaning has entered. Let them go. Safe. There may be long spaces now in which nothing needs to happen. Let nothing happen. Nothing happening is enough. The night does not need entertainment. The subconscious does not need another speech. You do not need another lesson. Nothing. Quiet. Home. Perhaps your breathing changes on its own. No need to notice. Perhaps the body becomes heavier. No need to notice. Perhaps you feel light. No need to notice. The body knows how to sleep without instruction. You have done this all your life. Let it remember. The mind knows how to loosen. Let it loosen. Nothing to force. Nothing to check. Nothing to solve. Already. Safe. Peace. Sleep. If a thought of tomorrow comes, it may pass without completion. Tomorrow. Then gone. If a face appears, it may fade. A face, then gone. If a number appears, let it lose meaning. Gone. If an old conversation begins, perhaps the voices become too tired to finish the sentence. Gone. Everything may become incomplete except the state. The state is enough, safe, supported. The old mind wanted to complete every story. Tonight, it can leave stories unfinished. No danger in incompletion. Sleep itself is allowed to interrupt the sentence. You may not hear the end. You do not need the end. The end has already been chosen. Peace. Already. Perhaps there is a sense now that nothing is approaching you. No answer approaching. No fulfillment approaching. No change approaching. You are not waiting for arrival. The psychological arrival has already occurred. That is why you can rest. Already. There is no need to lean forward into tomorrow. Let yourself lean nowhere. Rest. No forward. No backward. Here. Safe. Home. Already. The state is still yours even when you stop thinking about it. You do not lose a home because you stop thinking of its walls. You do not lose your name because you stop repeating it. You do not lose the state because sleep removes the words. Let the state survive without your supervision. This is important. You do not need to guard it into sleep. Release even the guarding. If the last conscious thought is not perfect, nothing is ruined. If another random memory appears, nothing is ruined. If sleep comes suddenly, nothing is ruined. You are not balancing the whole work upon one fragile second. You have chosen enough. You have accepted enough. Now sleep may take you as you are, supported, secure, loved, safe, quiet. The words may move farther apart, supported, secure, loved, safe, quiet, further, safe, supported, home, further, already, safe, peace, sleep. No need to repeat unless the words return naturally. Already, safe, peace, sleep. Perhaps even already is too much now. Safe, peace, sleep. Perhaps peace, sleep. Perhaps sleep. And perhaps even that disappears. No instruction, no effort. Only the quiet state beneath the word. You are not fighting yourself. There is no battle left to continue. You are not controlling every thought. There is nothing left to police. You are not correcting the past. The past can remain behind you. You are not building tomorrow. Tomorrow can build itself in its proper hour. You are simply here, quiet, safe, supported, home. The old voice is asleep. The old argument is asleep. The old question is asleep. The one who watched is asleep. The one who waited is asleep. The one who worried is asleep. Let them all become quiet. No one needs to keep watch. Nothing needs to be defended. Nothing needs to be earned. Nothing needs to be persuaded. The new identity does not need to shout. It can remain without language. It can remain while the mind drifts. It can remain while images disappear. It can remain while even the sense of I am practicing disappears. There is no practice now. Only rest. Supported. Safe. Home. Already. Peace. The whole day becomes distant. The room becomes distant. The voice becomes distant. Even the state no longer needs a name. It is simply what remains when you stop returning to the old one. No struggle, no persuasion, no watching, no effort, quiet, home, peace, already, safe. Perhaps the final words do not need to form complete sentences anymore. Supported, loved, secure, safe, quiet, home, already, peace, sleep. Supported, safe, home, already, peace, sleep, safe, home, peace, already, sleep, already, safe, peace, sleep.